Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Not joining me this week is Tom. He's on assignment somewhere. He's heading over to GW headquarters. He's doing his best to fight for the Guardian of Souls. He's trying to get that, sneak it back into the next printing so he can have his mortality glass. He's on mission. No, Tom will be joining us at some point next week. He'll be back. He's just out with his family, but that's okay because we have a guest back on the show. I am very happy and potentially one of the best people in the world to help me parse rules. It's Mr. Nico. How you doing, sir?
I'm great. Thanks, Vince. Thanks for having me on again. Great to be here.
Absolute pleasure. A fellow lover of chaos in all things. You truly have built and amassed an unprecedented selection of the Dark God's best children, and we're simpatico on that for sure. And of course, Nico is also excellent for understanding true nuance in rules. You wrote up a really great piece. Where was that on? Was it on AOS Shorts? I read the whole thing. I don't remember where it was.
AOS Shorts, yeah. And Dan gave me some help with the editing. The problem with that article is we kept writing it and they kept adding new rules and new battle tones as we went. So we had to add an extra chapter on Slanesh right at the end as well. But it's called The Activation Wars on AOS Shorts in their tactics section. But it was good writing that one.
It was a great piece. Really broke it down. Really helped people understand clearly how to navigate this. Perhaps let's call it slightly murky area of the of activation in combat. By the way, I'll real quick answer a question here. Ilya asked a question of where the flowers on bases come from. Check out Bad Squiddo Games. Annie has a bunch of them. She's traditionally where I've ordered some from, but there's a lot of sources. I can post some links down there, but check out Bad Squiddo Games. She can point you in all the right directions. So there you go. Great selection of different stuff. So, and always good to support Annie because she's awesome. Anywho, today we're going to be talking about the FAQ, the changes, the big FAQ we've been waiting. Did the meta get corrected? Is everything back to normal now? Have we solved all the problems? Is it all sunshine and roses? What kind of massive shakeups can we expect? That's what we're going to talk today. But of course, first we got some news. My dog has brought me a little unicorn. So Nico is on vacation as well, by the way. But unlike Tom, he is nice enough to abandon his family and join us to talk about Warhammer. So I appreciate that, Nico. Thank you. And thank your family, by the way, for letting you go for a little while.
I will. They're certainly, you're very welcome. And hopefully my little son won't be sort of running into the into camera shot anytime soon. But
well, it's very late there, so hopefully he's asleep. Yes.
Hopefully, yeah.
All right, so let's get into some news because we've actually got some news this week. We can start with the rumor engine, which I actually thought was pretty cool this week. So let's take a look at that. I will share up here. I can't wait until less than a month from now when I lose the current tool that I use to actually do this show. Have to go through a much more long and arduous process to do this show, and it's going to be a giant pain in the tuchus. So. If things don't go smooth at the beginning of August, I'm sorry in advance, but this is the world we live in. I don't control this. Anyway.
Is Hangouts going the way of Google Plus?
It is, yes. And no. I have to have some new streaming thing, and it's going to be a nightmare. But anyway, Kings with noses chopped off. So right away, I'm thinking, cut off your nose to spite your face, right? But as a fellow servitor of the Dark Gods, this screams chaos to me. What about you?
Yeah, I just immediately thought King. I thought Slayer of Kings. I thought, well, with Warcry, perhaps maybe next week or certainly this month. I think it's coming. So I did think the new possible Everchosen tie-in that would go in with Warcry, or maybe updating and expanding the Darker Oath range. Certainly. They've done a lot of work on the Everchosen Battle Tome, the original one, which has got much detail about the different circles of Varangard as we have on the different Stormcast hosts. So they've done a lot of the groundwork already, and it'll be an interesting release. So hopefully these are hanging off the back of some, Varangard or Super Varangard or Uber Varangard.
I would accept all of that. I love the idea of an even better Baron card. That'd be amazing. Like 8 wound cavalry, each of them. They come in units of 2. They're super cav.
Or like a hero unit for them. Maybe riding something bigger than a horse.
There you go. Yeah. Like evil, like yeah, sure. Like fulminators, like the Dracoth riders, right? But on that level.
Corrupted ones or all sorts. I mean,
Yeah.
there's certainly no shortage of new fauna that have come out of the Mortal Realms in recent releases. We just had another beetle thing with the Sylvaneth and squigs and
absolutely. Yeah, I dig that.
Forms, and we've got a lion coming soon.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. We know Warcry is going to have this big Slaves to Darkness thing. They've said that the Warcry warbands don't have marks, but they will all have the Slaves to Darkness keyword. Okay. Yeah. So we know there's going to be these, and we know they're going to have AOS rules at launch. Okay. So putting all that together, it makes sense that if we were going to get a new, and oh, by the way, did we mention that this entire fight is happening at the All Points, the thing that Archeon rules as his domain?
And he's been suspiciously quiet the last sort of year or so.
Yeah. So like if we were going to have a Ever-Chosen Slaves to Darkness, Dark Oath, whatever it is, releasing it kind of close to, on the back of, in line with whatever Warcry kind of feels like the right time, because you'd have a bunch of new models, right? You've basically got a whole release with half the work. So yeah, I'm excited. I agree. This totally screams chaos. It totally screams Slayer of Kings to me as well. I don't think Archeon's getting a new model, obviously. Like, we're good on him. He's that's his model for the next decade. But I dig that. I do think it'd be sweet to, like, that could be a new special character or something in there, like somebody who, or like some new hero, like Chaos doesn't have enough heroes, but it could be like some kind of new barbarian hero who goes around and dethrones kings, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that'd be great. All right. So other news stuff. Boy, oh boy, did we get a new Warcry announcement. Speaking of Warcry, holy moly. Did you see these guys yet? Let's share again.
I love them. Once you bring it up, I've seen.
There you go. These guys are crazy.
Yeah. Well, the one on the left I've seen perhaps ungenerously compared to the love child of Skeletor and Oscar Pistorius.
Yeah.
Okay. That meme was up within about 20 minutes on Twitter. It was.
It feels right.
I love these things. I think they'll fit right into Slaanesh and all sorts of conversion opportunities as well. I was thinking like Rax in 40k Drukhari Dark Eldar. They're really menacing and twisted and artificial limbs and all sorts. I'm loving them.
Yeah, here I've got another picture here. This is some more just the troops. You can see a bunch of missing limbs. This one's missing his like right arm. This is missing his left, right, and so on. So they've hacked off limbs. Obviously, the relevant part to understand is that they've all cut off their faces, right? And this is their face. It's stretched around their belt. Like they all cut off their own faces and put them on their belts, which I immediately said was like the Nick Cage jokes. That was the first thing that came to my mind. Like, I want to take his face off.
Indeed.
So, kudos to anybody who makes the face-off warband. So there you go. I mean, there are going to be a lot of warband leaders of this warband, if we have to create our own names, sharing the name with Nick Cage's character from Face Off.
Sometimes it writes itself.
Yes.
If it's more of a Necromunda campaign type game, then you'll definitely enjoy following the tales of these people.
Absolutely. So yeah, these dudes felt to me, they're from Shaiish, and they felt to me like what happens when people in Shaiish get on that like Slanesh train. I understand that they're not actually Slaneshi figures, but like this is clearly like obsession with this kind of modification and that sort of thing taken to excess, right? If there was ever a warband that screamed excess, it's these guys. So
Absolutely.
yeah, they're looking to attract the Dark Prince's attention here. Also, what is it with these warband leaders on stilts? This is the second one, right? We've seen on stilts because the bird guy was on stilts also.
Absolutely.
So,
maybe there are lots of traps on the ground in
in Warcry. Yeah, they
inspire. stay above it all.
Absolutely. Yes. So these guys are pretty cool. Pretty cool. I'm honestly not sure if I like them or not, which I like. Like what I mean is part of me is like, that's super cool. They feel a little Cenobite-y, right? Part of me is like, I'm not sure about that. They're a bit insane. But here's what I'll say. They are maybe going to be one of the most sold warbands out of the new thing. I predict them having a slightly higher sales spike than all the rest, solely for conversions for like, Inquisition 28 and stuff like that for their 40K applications. These guys are conversion fodder.
Absolutely. Chaos cultists and all sorts.
Yes. And so I think these guys are they're cool, but disturbing and wonderful all at the same time. They're like, I've said before that the reason Slanesh attracts me is because like what I love is this weird line. There's like this sort of middle point between horror and beauty, like disgust and desire, right? You're trying to hit that sweet spot because things that disgust us also attract us. You can't look away from train wrecks and stuff like that, right?
Sure.
And so that's the space. Taking that to an extreme is where Slanesh plays in. But there's like it's a very thin window. You go too far to either side. You go too far towards like just desire, it gets boring. You go too far towards disgust, it just becomes gross. So you gotta hit that target.
Sweet spot. Yeah.
And they're over here. They're right on that side where it's like maybe a little too disturbing, but yeah. But I'll that's they finally, it took toward the last one, but they finally made one that I went, I'll buy that one. Because the rest of them, I've just been like, nope. Is this the last one or is this the fifth one?
I was just going to say, I think there might be one more.
Okay.
People are speculating it might be the Heish one or.
Oh yeah, good call. Yeah, because we've got bird people, poison people,
diving people.
Yes, Scuba Steve and the Beastmasters, and then these guys. You're right. That's 5. Yep. So there is one more. Okay, cool. All right. So they got me on number 5. Hey, that's pretty good. I thought it would take till 6, but there it is. So yes, these guys are gold for conversions and for everything else. Okay. So that's exciting. And obviously I don't know if we're talking about the 20th will be the launch. Obviously here we are on the 10th, but the 20th is, the AOS open day. And so I would imagine they'll say they go, if they haven't already said it's launching yet, then it's probably pre-order on the 20th, but I mean, we'll know this weekend because either they're going to say,
it'll be one or the other because they're doing the first like demo games, I think on the 20th.
Yeah, it makes sense that they would say pre-order on the 20th and we'll do demo games there and it's available the week after or whatever.
And they kind of did that sort of omnibus pre-order this week where they cleared out a lot of things on a lot of systems that may have been making space for Warcry.
Exactly. It feels like this week was sort of, hey, we've got all this stuff. We got nowhere else in the calendar to put it. Just shove it all out, get it out there, clear the decks.
Finally arrived. So
exactly. And that is the next news item, which is the customs dispute has been resolved. The Sylvaneth tome, the once and future Schrodinger Sylvaneth here, is finally going to release. So this week, the Sylvaneth book finally goes on pre-order. Tree people around the world rejoice. Now everybody can go out and replace their forests, which I'm sure they're very excited about. Yeah. Did you have a chance to look over the Sylvaneth tome when it leaked?
I did sneak a look at it. I did indeed. It's it's a big change compared to what it was. The moving away from the 1-drops and the reliably carpeting the the table in Wildwood's turn 1 is huge, but they have picked up a lot. They used to be sort of very strong stats and pretty elite models and war scrolls, but very weak combat buffs. But now they've got more of a spectrum. They've got some buffs that can be good for shooting. They've got some good Kurnoth buffs like Fight Twice, and a lot of strong magic as previously. So I think they're more rounded, and there's definitely going to be some interesting builds there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, we'll do a full show on the book when it comes out for real, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, my read on it was it's a very different feeling army, and it's actually going to take a little bit of time to unlock for a lot of players. Now, the fact that everybody suddenly got all this like preview time means I suspect some of the more adept players are going to be ahead of the curve here. But it'll be interesting. I will be very fascinated to see where Sylvaneth goes. I have a Sylvaneth army, and I never play it because I hate woods. I hate those dumb trees. I hate placing trees. Like I like the troops. I like Kurnoth, and I like dryads and crap like that. I think those are fun. I think tree men and stuff are fun, but I can't be bothered to be setting up that much terrain. If it was like, as I said, my truly desired fix.
Hello. Vince? Vince? Can you still hear me? Hello? Hey. Vince? Vince? Oh, Vince.
Hey-o.
Hey. Okay. I can hear you.
All right.
We back?
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that, everybody. Jeez, little Pete's. My internet decided to just randomly die in the middle of the show, so I am very sorry, everyone.
I'm relieved it wasn't me. I was thinking
no, it wasn't you. It was going to be me joining from my phone in about 4 seconds. I had to, just internet gone, and I realized I was talking to no one. I'm very sorry, everybody. I hope we're still I hope everybody's still watching and everything. I'm very sorry for all the dead air.
Where were we? Wildwoods? We moved on.
Yeah, so Sylvaneth. It's coming this weekend. At any rate, yeah, and I didn't have, and of course, this is the one where Tom isn't here, where he could, cover for me or do something useful. As usual, that guy lets me down. Somehow, it's all Tom's fault again.
He probably sabotaged it, surely.
I'm sure. I think that was definitely Tom's fault. I think we can blame him, as he's not here. He can't defend himself. No, I was saying, I don't know where I left off, but I was saying I have a Sylvaneth army and I don't play it because I hate the woods. So I wish that they had just made it so you had one grove, that you set down, and then you just made other parts of the terrain overgrown, right? You just picked other existing terrain features and just you count them as overgrown or something, whatever. It doesn't have to be that new terrain thing, but then they count as your woods.
Then you can teleport to them, etc.
Yeah. It's so easy. Would have been so easy. But here we are. So
yeah, we'll come on to the actual solution in the FAQ later on.
Exactly. All right. So let's see. Back to the new stuff. Sorry, everyone. I apologize again. Dreadfane, Beginner Underworlds, that's happening. So there's a new starter set releasing for that. More beginner-oriented, which is cool. It is, again, the Stormcast versus Nighthaunt. So if you're looking for an onboarding point into Underworlds, Shadespire, Nightvault, blah, blah, blah. Cool. Obviously, before Season 3 starts, which will be not too far away. So, okay. Cool. Neat. I have nothing else to say about that. And we should talk a little about Essex GT this last weekend. You thought I was going to not mention this. No, I'm mentioning this. So, Nico, did you see the top 3 out of Essex GT this last weekend?
Yeah, I did. There was a certain anomaly in the top 3.
There was indeed, my friend. There was indeed. I mean, first off, the thing that I feel everybody is going to talk about is that there was a lot of Slaanesh, right? 4 out of the top 10 were Slaanesh, which is fine. Okay. We can have a separate discussion. Is Slaanesh too good? Blah, 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 blah. I obviously think no. Other people disagree with me. That's fine. I'm okay with it. We can have a disagreement about it. Maybe I should do a show just called is Slaanesh overpowered or whatever, right?
You could do that for 6 hours,
Sure. I mean, the reality is it's just never a bad time for another 6-hour Slaanesh show, right? And Slaanesh took first, and it was a good list, and fine. Separate discussion. But the second place, Ironjaws, what's coming back in, baby? We're back. We were never here to begin with.
No, Leo, a clubmate of mine, are doing really well with them.
Yes. Yeah, that was Leo who took it. His list was great. 2 20 packs of Ard Boys, which I thought was really nice. And then some pigs. The old Mega Boss on Maw Crusher. Basically the hero selection you would expect. And then in Iron Suns and with an Iron Fist. And I've been repping Iron Suns for a long time. I still believe it's the better one.
I remember persuading Simon from my club to switch from Blood
Tubes, yeah.
As he was handing in his list, to just cross off that line and put that one in. It worked out well for him. They're both good, but I do prefer Iron Suns.
I agree. I think they're both actually really strong, but that -1 to hit for the first battle round, moving to a 2-up in a game where so much can happen in the first battle round, right?
Yeah.
It's just massive. And by the way, I think it's only going to get better because I think we're going to see more shooting armies come into the meta, right? So
possibly more Kin as well as a reaction to Slaanesh and others.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously Slaanesh is very weak to shooting, so it won't surprise me if that's yet more incentive to pile on with the shooting. I would also state that Ironjaws actually have a really interesting matchup with Slaanesh, because on one hand, they're a depravity punching bag, right? Everything they have is
multi-wound.
Right. On the other hand, they can fight in the hero phase, so they get around Locust in that way. And they have a lot of movement. Like, you have a lot of movement tricks now between your Mighty Destroyers and Iron Fist and all of that. They Ironjaws can actually be remarkably fast. And moreover, Smashin' and Bashin' beats Locus of Depravity. The trick with Smashin' and Bashin' is you have to be able to kill units, and Slaanesh stuff dies pretty easy. So if you can have one unit dodge the Locust, which is fairly likely, as even if they're running double keeper, that's only 2 potential 2-up Locust targets, right? And again, as I've said before, Ironjaws tend to run best in a fairly MSU-ish build, right? So they have the unit number that you can't hit them with just one Locust and take them out of the game. And if they blow one unit down, it triggers Smashin' and Bashin', and you can pull a unit out of Locus of Depravity with Smashin' and Bashin' and get them to fight.
Am I right in thinking that they changed that at some point? So it used to be the nearest unit, but then it became you pick a unit?
You are exactly correct.
Was that a year ago, or was that?
Yeah, it was in
the previous GHB?
I think it was the previous GHB where they changed it. Yeah, 2018. It did change. I don't remember when. It was it's a great change, and the key with Smashin' and Bashin' is it just says pick another unit that hasn't fought yet, right? And is eligible to fight in this combat round. Well, since it didn't time limit it, a unit to fight at the end of the combat round is still eligible and hasn't fought yet, it completely satisfies the criteria. And so that unit can rip itself out of Locus of Diversion and start fighting and go beat whatever it's in combat with up, which is awesome, because that means that if you're on the charge as IJ and you can get one dodge, you can still blow down all the stuff that's in combat with you that's on the Slaanesh side. And again, Ironjaws hit real hard, Slaanesh dies real easy. They rely on that Locust to stay alive. So yeah, it's actually, I think, a really fun matchup, because they're both melee armies. They both have advantages and weaknesses to each other. That's exactly the kind of matchup I like to play.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Run, nice big shiny monsters as well.
Oh yeah, exactly. So Smashin' and Bashin' continues to be one of the better abilities in the game. They're also both armies that can very easily get bonuses to charge. So they just they're just racing forward and smashing into each other at hyperspeed. So yeah, it's good stuff. Okay. So go Ironjaws. And we should, of course, shout out Ben Sava, who took 3rd place with his Legion of Grief. So I'm not surprised to see Legion of Grief doing well. I think it's got a lot of gas in the engine. Now we'll discuss whether or not the particular FAQ answer that came up here is going to change that at all, but there we go. I think it's still interesting, but this did have a befuddling answer for the Legion of Grief. So, I mean, we'll see what you think about it. Anywho, that's the news for this week. So, grats to all those, and grats to Leo, my new hero, and apparently the best Ironjaws player in the world. So, congratulations, man.
Yeah, snagging that icon.
Exactly. All right. Alex in the chat said his current record is killing 5 keepers and winning playing as Ironjaws, killing his way through 5 keepers of secrets when the opponent got 154 depravity.
Oof. Wow.
That is a murder fest. Oh my god, that game sounds amazing.
Imagine the keepers just coming onto the table, failing their charges, and then getting flooded by our boys and dragged down.
Oh, what a wonderful game. That might throw some people askew, but I always think back to back when Wizard Magazine was a thing, when magazines were a thing. They used to do these imaginary matchups. And so it would be E.T. versus Yoda and stuff like that. And they would tell a little story. and one of them was the Borg versus the orcs of Warhammer 40K. And like every round was just every time the Borg went, they would just kill all of the orcs. And then the next round was just like round 3, here come the orcs. And it was just more orcs would just keep coming and keep coming. And I loved that joke. I will point out the orcs ended up winning because the Borg realized they would get too weak by assimilating them into the it would pollute the Borg too much by assimilating them. So I always thought that was a great story. Anyway, nerdy thing that has nothing to do with this. Let's talk about some pick of the week, man. You got anything you want to share with everybody, Nico?
I do. So there's a new gaming venue in London called the Bad Moon Cafe, which is got more of a sort of hipster modern vibe compared to the usual dank that you can find in some gaming stores. And they have a sort of community focus series of videos on YouTube. So this basically covers the art and the lore and the narrative around a particular army that someone in their community has done. So the first one went up recently, and it covered the narrative around Ben Sava's Daughters of Cain army. So it was sufficiently sort of grim, dark,
nice,
sort of evil women evil women spirits in the forest who had slaughtered all the menfolk who were responsible for all the wars and were sort of sitting out the age of chaos, and then afterwards had come out to see what was going on and to smash them face. And yeah, it's really very professional photography of the army, and really good interview. So check that one out.
That's awesome. That sounds super cool. I will link that down below. My pick of the week is a fun one. So our old buddy Hooves of Doom is back, and he's making content again. And hopefully hopefully he sticks around this time. I know he got called off on a sudden mission for a couple weeks, but I know he's got some videos queued up. And he put out a quick 5-minute video about the Goblin Spear Chucka and its analogies to Julius Caesar and his writings from the Gaelic wars, okay, from the wars in Gaul, and about how they had used their scorpion, which is obviously very similar in design to what the sort of spear chucker, that kind of bolt thrower is, in the exact same way as the goblins use it to just kill this one particular person. There was it's a great story, which he reads directly in Caesar's words from the letters from those wars. And it's just a cool analogy to history, a really neat thing. So check it out. It's a fun video. And that those wacky rules the spear chucka has are probably quite correct when you look at the historical writings of how they were using them. But there you go.
The Doom Diver maybe not so much, but
that probably doesn't show up in the text. No. And also Gary, that's fine. Sorry, Gary P is in the chat, and he commented. He said the fact that Haywo's video wasn't a pick of the week is criminal. I'll link Haywo's video. I don't want to set it up. Yes. Haywo's initial FAQ reaction video, a wonderful meme in itself. You're absolutely right, Gary. That should be shouted out. I don't know that I need to boost the signal on that. If you haven't watched that, you're doing yourself a disservice, but I will link that too, because it is, it's absolutely very funny. It is a bit racy, as they say. It is for adults. It features adult language, typed out, but adult language nonetheless. So if you don't like cursing and that sort of thing, then don't watch it. But it was very funny. So there you go. You have been warned, mature content, but it was very funny. Don't watch it out loud on your phone with your kids in the room, probably. So, actually you could, because it'd all be in a different language, so you could read it. Yeah, you can. Never mind. You could totally watch it with your kids. I hear it, what was typed out at the bottom in my head, but that's not actually what's being said. That's so funny. Yeah. Anyway, so I'll link it down there below, because yes, just as deadly as ever. So I do love that in typing that sentence, I have to wonder if the member of the community team, in typing out that sentence, they were writing that article out, right? and they sat down, they put it through editing or whatever, went to somebody else for approval. And so multiple people probably read it. Did they realize what they were writing? Like, did they think to themselves, this is a meme right here? Like, I have just set a meme into motion.
Without any tweaking at all. It was just straight, fully prepackaged meme.
Right, exactly. So, I don't know. But at any rate, all that will be linked below. Let's talk a little hobby time. I know you worked on a bunch of stuff before you left. Obviously, you're on vacation now. I doubt you're hobbying much now, but what were you working on before you headed out?
Yeah, so just finished off doing 30 Demonette stroke Sisters of Slaughter. So just some pretty simple conversions there, but doing a sort of blue skin theme and some nice pink claws and the old lava bases, which divide opinion. So doing them, and I'm just done the metallics on the my first Keeper of Secrets to go with the Forge World one, rebasing the Forge World one, but also being severely tempted by other armies. So sort of Skaven and Gits and even Khorne now. So being pulled in a few directions, but exciting times, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, I do think, not to get ahead to our conversation, we'll talk about it in a moment, but I do think the world is going to open up some. We can talk about whether it's opened up enough, but I do think that this is positive. We can argue about it to how far the degree goes, but I think we are going to see a more open world now. So I think there's a lot of like potential. So I get the being pulled in multiple directions. For myself, I finished up the big project I was working on, the duel between Shalaxi and the Bloodthirster. Posted that up this last weekend. That was obviously a big project. So that went up. If you want to see that, it's on, Twitter, my Twitter and my Instagram and everything else, which you can find linked down in the description. And so having finished up a basically 3 to 4 week project with hundreds of hours, probably 150 to 200 hours easily. Like, I don't know. I just lost track. It just kept working. Eventually you just get into the cycle. You stop thinking about it. You're just working and working. I needed a couple smaller projects. So I did doing some funsies things, posted up Sister Amalia. I finished her up. The new Sister of Battle they released. I'm working on this Slanesh Endless spell, doing the little like magic, swirly twirly base. There's like this clear resin down here, so it's all just magic because I don't like to have these things based on actual bases, even though this base is for my army. Like this is an army specific spell. I just like endless spells being completely magic. I don't know, just personal
sure.
taste.
I like them coming out of pools of magical fluid.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The mirror that goes with this, I'm actually doing a resin pour in, so it's smooth. Because I don't like their wavy mirror thing. I want like an actual mirror. So that's actually drying behind me. Simultaneously, did somebody say Iron Jaws? Whoa! So we're getting this guy out and ready to go. As well, we're getting another foot war boss ready to go. Another foot mega boss. And because it's just these are good. Sadly, I know one of the things I need to work on. Do you know what this is called, Nico? These guys, this is called procrastination. Okay? That's what this is called.
It's an even bigger project that you're working on as well, isn't there?
Yeah, because I know what I like in multiple ways. I know I need to work on another big project. I know I need to work on, and for this army, I need to work on Ardboys. And I hate painting Ardboys. They're the worst. And that the unit is sitting there, they're primed, they're all in their little corks. They're just saying, we're ready to be painted, put us in. And I'm like,
jumping up and down.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, nope, we're doing these two things instead because these are more fun. But anyway, so these guys are in progress. He's mostly done. He just needs based. And then this dude is still very early on whip. But yeah. More heroes is never a bad thing. More smashing and bashing for the lads. And obviously that caster is now obviously completely essential given the new teleport. Like you're going to have one of those. You're going to have a shaman in every army. So
definitely.
It's funny because back in the day I would frequently run the army sans caster. Like he
there was
just
less need to have an unbind there back in the day.
right. Yeah, I mean this is a lot of like yeah, exactly, and pre AOS 2, pre endless spells, right? So like the need to have a caster was lower. Like yeah, sure, sometimes magic would happen, and it's like okay, it's fine, just fight over top of it, like it's cool. At any rate, eventually the Ard boys will have to get painted. I don't want to do it, but here we are. So this is all procrastination. That's not doing the Ard boys. There'll probably be something else I'll throw in the way too. I was looking at this. I got picked up like recently one of those when I was at a convention somewhere. I picked up Warlord Spinetail, like one of the special named character old Skaven war bosses that was really sweet looking. The dude with like the sort of sharp, spiky sword. And I've wanted that guy for a while. He was one of the warlords I didn't have, one of the special characters I didn't have. So I picked him up. He'll probably end up hitting the table first. I was like looking at a witch hunter the other day, like I could paint this guy. And I'm like, what am I doing with my life?
You're adding procrastination onto the procrastination. Yeah.
Right. When you're thinking about painting up witch hunters, you've immediately gone down a road of where you're trying to procrastinate from painting something bigger.
I've got a club mate who's running devoted.
That's what I heard.
Multiple witch hunters and did pretty well today actually at the club.
That's awesome.
Blew up some bloodthirsters with the laser cannons.
Yes.
Arrays.
Is he using a bunch of the new cheaper
Legends?
Luminarchs, basically? Like since
he's using the war altars because against demons they are crazy. They're
like, that's right.
Something wacky. As do the Luminarchs, but I think it's an even bigger multiplier.
Yeah. I was wondering, like, because now that the Luminarch has the cheaper non-caster version, you could ally two of them into a a devoted army, or just use them in a Grand Alliance Order force. I don't know how he's running it.
Exactly. So. Yeah, all good options, especially with so many chaos armies out there.
Yes, it's a good time to have bonus damage against chaos. Yes, that is absolutely true. All right. As far as I know, Gary, it does. At this point, it doesn't have that word, the magic word any in it yet. The question was, do the saves stack from a Luminarch? And the answer, as far as I know right now, is yes, although it shouldn't. Common sense says it shouldn't, but here we are.
No.
All right. So with that being said, let's talk FAQ. So the big FAQ dropped. We got some points updates for 4 forces, for our Gits, for Khorne, for Skaven, and for FEC. Fire Slayers and Slaanesh did not get points adjustments, which isn't surprising given how recent they are. I'm not sure that we have enough data yet to confidently change any of those points. Again, whether or not you think they're necessary, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I still think it's good to be more conservative with that kind of stuff rather than to knee jerk. So there you go. And then as well, obviously, we got FAQ for a bunch of different forces beyond that, right? So 40,000 foot view, as usual. What was your overall feeling, Nico? Like, what did you think about this FAQ? Did it deliver what you were looking for? What did you think of it in toto?
I was generally pleased. I think the first relief was seeing that they hadn't sort of wielded the nerf hammer too strongly on any of the armies that we know and love. So, there were nerfs to Skaven, there were nerfs to Feck. But there weren't, for example, there wasn't like an additional nerf to, say, Hagnar ward saves on top of the existing points reductions, which could easily have happened.
Sure.
So I think they've taken on board the feedback regarding KO and Tzeentch from last year, and are being more soft-touched with it, which is great. On the other hand, there are sort of, and it's probably a less important factor, but there are some sort of monsters and war scrolls that are sort of painfully overcosted, and they've made reductions. So thinking of things like the Eidolon or the Dankhold Trog boss, that they've made reductions, but they're just palpably not quite enough. And it's a shame to not see some of those models in play.
Agreed.
There's a couple of sort of easy fixes that you would have liked to have seen. A few oddities, probably one sort of semi-burning issue on the scenery rules and how that's going to play out with Sylvaneth. But generally, big thumbs up.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with that. Like, all in all, I do wish they had went a little farther with some of the changes. Like, honestly, I kind of wish they had hit Skaven a little harder. Um, I think maybe the FEC touches were just right. I mean, we can talk through that. That one felt closer. One of the challenges with Skaven is I think that they were Skaven, I think, is actually almost completely a problem with points. Exempting Rat Trap, which, as I have stated multiple times and repeatedly on this show, I wish they would just throw that War Scroll in the bin and rewrite it. I really wish that. Okay, but we're not going to have that happen, so fine. They did change it. Cool, we'll talk about it. I think most of what the challenge is with Skaven was points, right? Like they're just undercosted, flat. Just was the case.
You looked at a loon boss on Angler compared to a Vermin Lord, and you're like, they were different ballpark.
Yeah, exactly. There's and I think that these were positive moves. I think ultimately my wish is, so like if I had to think of it on like what's 100%. And by the way, I agree with you. Like in the end, if they're going to err on one side, if we imagine some perfect imaginary line they should be hitting, right? The reality is they're going to err on one side of that imaginary line. Either they're going to be too soft or too hard, right? And the reality is I would probably rather have them err on the too soft rather than the too hard side, because I think like we as a competitive community can usually handle these things sort of on their own, adjustments to the meta and so on and so forth. Like people will generally learn to play around these types of things. And then that doesn't ruin people's army from the perspective of the game. If we never have what happened with KO or Tzeentch happen again, I'll be happy.
Exactly. And I think the fact that the pace of releases is high, helps and suits a situation where you are nerfing things softly, because it's quite likely that some new releases may weaken the dominance of existing armies the same way that Skaven and Feck pose a challenge, particularly to like the Nagash-based lists and so on.
Yep. So if I had to place it, I would say like overall, this was like when I look at how far I would have wanted them to go, this is like 70, 80%. They should have put on another 20 or 30% more juice, more FAQ juice, whatever that means. Okay. And a lot of this stuff, like there were a lot of good things here. There were some things that didn't go far enough. There were some things that are kind of head scratchers. And there's one thing that I will, since Tom is not here, don't worry, everyone. I am going to do my best to take Tom's position, because I think Tom, although he started out expressing it very angrily, like he does, because he's an emotional guy. He cares a lot. He's got a lot of passion. That's a good thing. I think he put his finger on a real problem, and so we'll talk about that when we get there. So let's get into this, shall we? I'm going to jump over to the FAQ, and we can just start banging through these, basically. I think is the way to go. So I'm going to start with the Forbidden Power FAQ, since that one's kind of newish and isn't. Let's share up here. Screen share. There we go. And here we are. Okay. So, two things, basically, right? Of note, I suppose. The gravesite text got changed to be in line. Okay, yep. Great. It's
as expected, as people had probably been playing it anyway.
Yep. And yeah, exactly. Like it always should have been worded the same. I don't know how this got put different wording in there ever. Lunchbox, the Bringy Dingy, his movement got kneecapped. Like you can't move after lunchboxing someone, after Bringy Dingy them. I wish to high heck I could quote Haywo's beautiful AOS FAQ reaction of that he had to this, because it was maybe the most genius piece of modern oratory. It was Shakespearean in its level of craftsmanship, and I can't even attempt to replicate it, but well done.
Leave that link in the show notes.
Just linking to that tweet. It is. Oh, yeah. Thank you. All right, here you go. No Scooty Booty after Bringy Dingy, but you can still largy chargy. There you go. So at any rate,
I think
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say I do like this change because there were some combos that were really pretty brutal and hard for people to deal with. I mean, the main one was putting 20 or 30 scryer acolytes around the boat. You know, move them with the boat, then they can move, then they can run, then they can shoot, and they've got, you know, potentially 3 buffs on their shooting, which is, you know, the -2 rend grenades with 4 rerolls and +1 to hit, -2 rend, and yeah, that could be absolutely devastating. And because they've got an 8-inch range, they'll be unable to do that particular combo. But the other interesting aspect of this is that, you know, some bright spark in a WhatsApp chat pointed out, and they must have known this for a while, but one of the things about, if you use this on a static shooting unit and you teleport them forward in your turn, if you're, let's say you're going second in the battle round, if you then win the initiative, you can keep them in place and keep shooting. But if you lose the initiative, they go first, then you're able to move the end of the spell, so you can take the boat and put the shooting unit back in where it was, or back behind a screen. So it's calling it the Gone Dola. And
the nicknames continue.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of us had really overlooked that because we looked at the obvious of, you know, move, teleport then move is very rare. It's pretty much change host and maybe some Seraphon tricks. So that was a real shocker. And that really gives some opportunities.
I agree. I mean, the advantage here is it's a very tactically interesting piece to be able to scoot units around in the hero phase, right? Yeah. And the fact that it can bust them out there 12 inches, that you could reposition them at a point in time when they could then absorb a critical buff you needed to drop in the hero phase or to whatever purpose, right? Seems to be the real value. Or if they're just very slow, the reality is moving 12, it might be better than their move 4 plus a run, right? That's pretty easy to imagine. So I don't think it needed the move after that was just, it's just goofball. It should have never been in there to begin with. So I'm honestly glad to see this one go. Like, this was a positive change.
Agreed.
Just like there's this game is super fast, and a little less than half the missions start you 18 inches away from your enemy. We didn't need this to, right? Like, we're good. Okay. And then, like, the Soul Scream Bridge got the death change thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. And then the designer's commentary. Okay, here we go. Here's where we get to our first potential head scratcher. If Lady O is the only Mortarch, does she have to be the general? Yes. Not surprising at all. Completely in line.
Yeah, I thought that was stated expressly in the rule, but anyway.
As did I. Yeah, maybe there was some kind of fuzziness to that.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's how I read it. So, okay, great. Yep. So answer 1 is yes. Lady O acts just like all the other Mortarchs in all the other legions.
Maybe they said that, you know, if you have any Mortarchs in your army, then Olinda or something. Who knows?
Sure.
Yeah.
So that one says, yes, it is aligned with all the other legions. Okay, got it. Understand thematically. Yeah. And then so I'm like, and I kept reading. And then, is the Legion of Grief considered to be a Legion of Nagash? For example, can the Locus of Shaiish ability be used for a Legion for the Legion of Grief spell lores, or could a Necromancer take a spell from the lore of Death Mages? No to all questions.
Yeah, I think. I mean, yeah, I completely see from a lore perspective that this doesn't make sense. But I think if you sort of have this allegiance that is sort of tacking on to the bigger allegiance from the main book, you could really have a muddle, particularly with things like, you know, can the battalions be used from the Legions of Nagash book? And obviously these specific rules that have been mentioned here, because I think the balancing of Legion of Grief seems to be on the basis of, you know, it's a self-contained rule set,
right?
But then you tack on, you know, the locus, what's it called? Yeah, the locus, the cast the spell twice.
The Locus of Shaiish, yeah,
is incredibly strong, and you know, so I can totally understand where this is coming from, but it is sort of, it does sit oddly.
Yeah, exactly. So this one's fascinating to me, right? Because when I take off any sense of like sort of yeah, we've got a new Schrodinger's item. It's the Schrodinger's Legion, as Gary just pointed out. When I take off like any kind of narrative hat, right? And I just think from like a pure game design perspective, right?
Yeah.
My head goes, yes, of course this makes sense, because exactly for the reasons you said. You want this to be a self-contained thing. Anytime you get that kind of like broad sweeping rules mixing, bad combinations happen, right? And things get sort of go off kilter in power level. So I'm like, okay, from that perspective, I totally get it. It makes sense. Super fine. The problem is it's like that's not the hat you operate from, right? Like you see these things, you see rules through the lens of whatever framing device they're presented as being under, right?
Yes.
And this is clearly presented as one of the legions. And so like saying they don't get any of those rules, probably the correct answer game balance wise.
Yeah.
The wrongest answer narratively and that kind of stuff, right? And it's funny because there was I don't know if you ever watched it, but Mark Rosewater gave a talk at the game developer conference where he talked about like sort of his 20 lessons he's learned from his life in game development. And one of the really important stories he shared was about sort of meeting user expectations. And he told the story of how the developer behind Plants vs. Zombies, which is like a tower defense game, right? And people would play his initial first concept and they would like not understand why they couldn't move their tower defense troops and why the other troops that were attacking were sort of moving so slowly and methodically. And he was like, oh, wait. And then he reframed it as the plants were defending and the zombies were the things attacking. And boom, everything snapped into place. Like users stopped complaining because it met their framing device, right? So,
you don't want something that's jarring to your sort of internal framework that you've got for this this game system.
Yeah, exactly. There's sort of a kind of like Vorthos sensibility to this, where like that old, again, to borrow a magic thing.
Yep.
Where like you see it through that lens and they need to align, and this just doesn't. But okay, so that's what this is now. It's the not a Legion. Got it. That's fine. All right. Ballades of Corn is our next up. By the way, folks, some of these we're just going to like skip because some of this stuff, like we'll just move through it quickly. Like this one, which has no new things, but showed up because
it does have points.
Because, oh yeah, that's right. The points are down here. Yeah, we can talk through this. Thank you.
I don't know if there's any. Yeah, I think maybe it's only.
There's no rules changes. It's just the points, and then I think and then this. Sorry, it was what I was thinking of: the Reapers of Vengeance and Tyrants of Blood. So we can do the points first, and then we'll talk about that. I was gonna totally good. Okay, so yeah, point stuff. Obviously there was no change up here in the base errata, but Corn was one of the books that did get a points update, so super cool. Skull Cannon's down 10, Blood Scrater down 20, Scar down 20, Volkia. What did she do? Did Volkia go? I don't remember what her old points were.
Up.
Yeah, she went up, right?
Off the back of me talking about how good I thought she was.
They're really trying to get me to not play Volkia, despite the fact that I love her. Why are you doing this to me? I don't understand why you're
a bit of a bargain, but now she's kind of fairly pointed, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fine. The reality is, like, I always run a Blood Secrator, and in the same army I have Volkia when I play my Corn, so it's like it's a wash.
She's a bit like she's like the AOS Smash Captain. She can sort of fly in. She's a tiny base, fly in and assassinate a key piece. It's an interesting model.
I think I think she would 100% be Smash Captain if she wasn't named, right?
Oh, sure, yeah. If you could give her a trait,
exactly. If you could give her like a trait and an item, she would be on tables left and right, because she would absolutely be Smash Captain. Even now, I agree with you. She can play that role because the reality is she's pretty strong. Like on the charge, she does damage. She's relatively tough.
Like those two rend,
yeah.
Good stuff.
And again, yes, you're right. It's that small base. It's the same way I use the mask, right?
Yeah.
Where and yet again, like I played Night Haunt this last weekend with my Slanesh, and there was a unit of like Grimghast Reapers floating around on one side of the table, and I was like, no problem. The mask just like danced off and handled that because she just like touched the corner of one of them, and I was like, okay, like I'm just gonna keep chasing you now. Retreat or fight her inefficiently.
Yeah, nice.
She's great for pinning units like Grimghasts because there's no depravity to get out of that unit. And she's not really a depravity maker anyways. She's so small, even with a 2-inch reach, it's hard for them to get many Grimghasts on her, and they don't get any of their bonuses against her.
And they don't get the rerolls, yeah.
Yep, exactly. So, yeah. And then the Bloodthirsters all went down basically like 10 to 20 points, depending. So,
yeah, which is helpful.
Yeah.
Adds up.
Overall, I think. Yeah, I would have liked to see the Skull Cannon down at 120. I think that would have actually been the right points value. But
it's now at the same level as the Gun Hauler, which is interesting.
Yes, but it's more interesting at 130 than it is at 140. That's what I'll say for sure. Like, I know that sounds like a completely pedantic statement, but I think it's true. Like, that is a difference. I still think 120 is the right number for it. It's a rather swingy.
I think it makes more of a difference for those sort of shooting units because they tend to be the last thing you put into the list as sort of and you're really trying to squeeze the points. Do you put in a shooting unit or an endless spell stroke a judgment?
Right.
So those little differences make it do add up.
Yep. But yeah, overall, I think this is good for Khorne. Like, I think Khorne is actually in a decentish place. I think there's a couple really interesting lists floating around for Khorne right now. Obviously, Magic is very powerful right now, and Khorne is super well positioned to not even give the beginnings of a hoot about that. So, and yes, Martin, that was a squeaky dog toy. My dog has decided to squeak her unicorn. At any rate, so good stuff. Positive on Khorne.
Definitely.
Shall we now discuss the most insane thing ever? You ready? You ready to break your brain?
Which one are we doing?
So we're going to go into the Khorne designer's commentary. So
just is it the big one that you're talking about?
Yes, the Reapers / Tyrants of Blood. That's correct. So
I think the first three are pretty as expected.
Right. Yeah. Like, can it attempt to cast all those prayers? Yes, it can. Are these actually a prayer? No. And is the demon keyword missing? No, it was omitted deliberately. Again, for rules purposes, I understand. Just like we said before with the Legion thing, this is one of those things that doesn't really grok, but I get it. I understand why they did it. It's just a shame. Okay. So I'm not going to read all this Reapers of Vengeance, Tyrants of Blood stuff out. Okay.
Yeah.
You can read it. It's on the screen. What's relevant here is that Reapers of Vengeance had a thing that said, after someone fights for the first time, you can choose to fight again. And Tyrants had a thing that said, after someone fights for the first time, you can choose to make somebody else pile in and fight. Right? In simplest terms, I'm vastly simplifying here, but that's the point. Both were triggered on after somebody fights the first time. Okay. And their clarification here is saying, if you decide to pile in and fight a second time, then you've no longer fought the first time and hence no longer qualify for the other one. If you decide to have somebody else pile in, then you no longer satisfy the first condition. And basically the trigger's passed. So you have to choose one trigger or the other. That's what this boils down to. Great.
So sort of diagrammatically, if you had 4 Bloodthirsters, A, B, C, D, you can go A can fight, that can trigger B to fight via the Tyrants, then C to fight via the Tyrants, then D to fight via the Tyrants, and then D can fight again using Reapers. But you can't do A, B, B, C, C, D, D as was previously thought.
Exactly. Yep. So you do still get one bite at the apple there.
Yeah. And if it's advantageous for you to do a double fight rather than carrying on the chain, then you can always do that as well.
Yeah, and so when you hear this, you think, okay, cool. So what we've said here is that when multiple things are triggered off the same thing, you basically can only pick one of them if that trigger would then invalidate the ability to do the other one, right? That's kind of what the sort of general thing we're pointing to. Okay.
You could be excused for thinking that, but they seem to be relying on the very specific. The first wording is really paramount, but it does sit uneasily with some of the other FAQs that we'll come on to. Hello, Vince.
Sorry, my wife was asking me a question. She just walked in.
Sure,
Sorry,
okay.
everyone. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, cool. So let's all just hold that in our head, and we'll come back to it later. Okay. But good to know. That's how that works. Super fair. Like accepting. I like that doesn't work together like that. Nobody wanted this to go AABB CCDD in my mind, right? Like at least I didn't. That seems ridiculous.
8 activations in a row. Not fun.
I can already hear the people saying, well, that's what happens with Slanesh. Like, I know you said it out there. I heard you. I heard you, people of the internet world. All right. And then there was just a slight cleanup here with Nighthaunt on the Mirmorn Banshees that when they want to eat a thing, they have to do it at the start of the hero phase.
Oh, I'd say that's probably more than just a little clarification. I think this is quite key.
It has a big impact on the way some people were playing this unit, certainly.
Yeah, because it's +1 attack for doing it. So literally doubling their output. And then you can stick another +1 attack on because you're not short on CPs in Legions of Grief. So they very rapidly become like 3 attacks each at -2 Ren. I think it's D3 damage. So because what you would do is you would cast your own Enter spell at the start and then eat it in the body of the hero phase. And then you get that buff straight up, which is really strong.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree. When I said small, I didn't mean like, I should have framed that better. Because I was meaning like, it's a small clarification in sort of what was clarified here, right?
The number of words is small. Yeah.
Yes, but I agree. It does have a big impact on sort of the Banshees and how they get played, because you're absolutely right. I mean, if I, like Ben Sava was doing this, right, with his Legion of Grief, he was casting his endless spell, resolving it. It was doing its thing, and then he would eat it and come in with the Banshees, right?
Yeah. It's a night with a clever combo.
Absolutely. And I mean, Tom has been on about these Mirmorn Banshees forever. So I know he was thinking along the exact same line. Like he's been a Banshee supporter since day one. So
I remember discussing the exact wording of the original and like looking at other rules and trying to work out that it definitively was intended to work in the hero phase instead of the start of the hero phase. And back in the day.
All right. Beast Claw Raiders.
We could probably summarize this one very quickly, can't we?
Of course, yes.
Yes,
is this a shooting attack? Yes, it's a shooting attack. And
there's another change. Sorry.
This is just, it's the same change. It's just like it further changed the wording on how to do this. The important part here, as has been stated, is this isn't actually a change. Like they had already made this clarification previously. This is really just like a language cleanup in line with the previous FAQ. They FAQ'd their FAQ, but didn't change what the FAQ was saying. They just changed its words.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay. I mean, cool. That new tome is coming. I'm positive. It's right around the corner. And then we will all eat our words and snowballs, I'm sure. All right.
Us out there for sure.
Yeah. All right. In the Legions of Nagash, they updated all of the Terrorgeist. Like all the Terrorgeist special rules to just have the new. This is just bringing it in line with the FEC wording, right? I went and looked, and that looked the same. I didn't notice any other differences.
I think that's right.
So If I missed something there, comments I'm sure will tell me. But I went and looked at the FEC wording and it looked the same. So I think that's all this was doing. And then down here, which this is a fascinating answer, which is Nagash and Archon know the spells that other wizards know. Can a Hex Scourge or Skulls make them forget the spells? Only if there are no other wizards in range for them to relearn the spell from, implying that it's like sort of this constant pulsing effect of them learning, not a one-time thing, right? So, which is interesting.
I kind of thought that answer kind of blurred the issue a bit, almost suggesting that it was a one and done thing. So if a wizard on the other, anyone on the table who was a death wizard was there, that Nagash knew all the spells and until they were stolen, and that wizard was also dead at the same point. But I don't think that was the intention. It felt like it was a sort of, are you within range at this point now when I'm trying to cast it, rather than one and done.
Yeah, I feel like this answer is perhaps a bit sort of indelicate. And so the answer should have been something like Nagash and Archon know all spells at all times that these wizards are, these other wizards, right? So like they cannot forget them, or that is to say, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's probably need a longer answer that's a little more delicately phrased. Sure. Obviously, I'm just spitballing off the top of my head, but something like that. That's basically implying it is a persistent effect, right?
Yes.
And so if the thing that is generating the effect, i.e. the presence of other wizards, is removed and the spell is then removed, the persistent effect is no longer there. But if it's not, the persistent effect remains, right? So yeah. Yep. Okay. Arcanaut Admiral said he can't forget the spells. He has them written down in his books. Good call. That's a good point. Right. Can't argue with logic like that. All right.
The big one.
Yeah, oh boy. Bring in them rats. So, first things first. Oh, okay. Let's start with this. So, change wholly within 26 of the caster to wholly within 13 inches of the caster for summon Warp Lightning Vortex. So, Nico, did this fix Warp Lightning Vortex?
It certainly feels like a fair-sized nerf to it, but it probably isn't the one I would have gone for. I might have, for example, taken away the initial damage that it does on setup, because that can really bite deeply when you get hit twice or potentially even like 4 times in a row by the vortex. The danger with just reducing the range is, in some battle bands you will be very close, and on other battle bands you'll be able to just skittily a hero forward and then cast the spell. And with some of the abilities that Skaven have, whether it's the arcane and a reroll on an engineer, or the 3d6 pick the two best, they're quite likely to cast that even against an enemy unbind, unless you're up against a gash or something. So it's a pretty modest nerf. It's certainly not excessive. You're certainly going to still see these things. And when you compare it to like the Comet, which I think is still 100, or the Mushroom at 90 now, it still looks very strong. And to be honest, also people are tending to, it's kind of a tough decision whether you make Skaven go first or second. But if you go second, then the range decrease will matter even less.
Well, and we should point out that, like, remember, as I stated earlier, right? And we all know this, a little less than half of the battle plans you set up 18 inches away, right? And the first pylon has to be wholly within 13, but the other pylons, right, have to be 7 inches away. So that reaches out 20 inches. So you can still stretch that thing into their lines turn one without even skitter leaping or moving, right?
Yeah, there's another 6 on top of that. So 26.
Exactly. Like I'm still reaching, like the pylons themselves are 2 inches in their line, and then I'm going 6 inches deeper than that. And you didn't even, like, of course you could skitter leap, cast it, and all hold them out of there. Like there's just so many other shenanigans that could happen here. This is the thing I was disappointed about. This is not strong enough. Bottom line, this needed more fixing.
Yeah, the reason, I mean, to be honest, the damage wasn't really the issue with this, but it was the crippling movement to get, particularly combined with shackles. Shackles at least went up in price quite sharply, but the combination of those things that can just lock down an entire army,
right?
You can suddenly feel like you lost the game within the first hero phase. I had a game against Nagash where I think you double cast the sort of AOE near a piece of scenery, halve your movement type spell, and just completely locked down the entire army, because it was a Gitz army and they were all congregated around the Loon Shrine. It was a shocking thing to do. So that kind of thing can be very disheartening, to say the least.
Yeah. And I mean, the fix to me here seems really simple. That is to say, I like this change. The range is fine. Yeah, it's like having it have a shorter range is good. That you could throw this thing way too far. So, like, I'm on board with this change. Yes, positive, good move. But it also should have been get rid of the double tap, right? Like, there's no reason for it to be double tapping. Set up an end of the movement phase where it's pinging twice.
Yeah.
And the real fix would have just been, because I agree with you. I think the movement is a real crippling part. To make it work where the movement debuff isn't automatic, right?
Yeah.
Like, have it ping once and have the movement debuff on a die, like shackles or whatever, right? Where it's like on an X plus, that unit's move is halved or whatever. Like, okay, great. We can figure out, like, we can discuss what the number should have been. 3 up, 4 up, 5 up. I don't know. Okay, like some number. Because it's got a big giant effect, so maybe it should be higher. Maybe it should only be limiting their movement on like a 4 or 5 up, since it's covering so much board space. And then fine, because then you can't just perma trap them in that movement debuff. And that just seemed like such a simple fix to keep it in there. It can still be 100 points. It's still quite broad without the double tap and without an automatic move lockdown where there's some risk to it. Cool. Okay, great. Awesome.
And you wouldn't even be adding another roll, because you tie it to the roll in the movement phase, and then if it was zapped, then it would be slowed.
Yeah, exactly. On this, it's zapped, on the blah 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 and moved and blah blah blah. Right? I mean, it's so easy. So this just had like this to me had the simplest road to go down to fix, and we just didn't get there. So next time around, I don't know what to say. Like, nope. Try harder. We can do more. All right. Points changes in Skaven. Hell Pit up 40, 20, 40, something like that. I don't remember.
I think 20.
Yeah, he was 220 before.
I was surprised to see that, to be honest. I mean, it's a good monster by anyone else's standards, but it wasn't exactly lighting up tables, because Mulder synergies weren't anywhere near as good as the rest of the book. But,
no, I mean, he's very destructive, but he's a pile of moderate wounds on a 5 up save. Like, come on. What are we talking about here? He's pretty easy to deal with. Grey Seer up 20. Grey Seer on Screaming Bell up 20.
That's a bit of a gift. That could have gone up.
The Grey Seer didn't go up enough. As a double caster with his punch ability, he's still too strong. The Grey Seer on Screaming Bell, maybe 220 is right. Maybe it should have been 240. The battle shot community is huge. He doesn't have the Warpstone power, right? That the little foot Grey Seer has. And like, obviously that is a major reason to want to have Grey Seers and or Thankful or something, is because you want the Warpstone addiction. What's that?
This is true. It does have some other annoying traits, like having Lookout Sir in melee on a model.
Oh, absolutely.
Save, which is challenging.
This thing is really tough to kind of like figure out, all told, because it can't move unless there are rats around it, but it also makes all the rats around it battle shock immune. It has an extra ward save, but it doesn't have the casting thing, but it is still a double caster. Like, it's probably still too cheap, but this isn't the one I want to die on the hill of. Like, the Grey Seer on foot is the one that's too cheap. He should be at 160.
Yeah.
Like,
at least 150.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Especially when we get to FEC and you see they move the regular Ghoul King up. Like, it's pretty inexcusable for this guy to be at 140. Yes, this dude is squishy. He's a dude with like a 5 up save, but he's a dude with a 5 up save who can, get lookout, sir, and he's very small, and it's easy to hide, and he can be in an obstacle automatically and on arcane terrain automatically.
There are so few double cast, double unbind wizards. It's like Scragrot. I mean, Stormcast had to get the one named character, not even the regular, Goat Boy. It has to be the named character version to actually have 2 casts and 2 unbinds.
Yep, exactly.
The Tarralon, in case you're wondering.
Yes, and that's, I think, the take-home point with the Skaven is all of these moves are barring like the Hell Pit, which is weird. I think we're in the right direction. Like directionally, I agree with all of this. I just don't feel that all of them went as far as they should have gone. Right? Sure. Like it's good. Lists are, some lists are like, I would say most of your Skaven lists that I would call highly competitive are somewhere between 80 and 200 points more expensive, like depending, right, on what's in there.
Sure.
That's a big deal. That's not nothing. Yeah. Okay. But there is a couple things in here that just did not get, that just should be more. Bottom line, they're still too cheap for what they're doing.
I've been writing some lists, today and yesterday for Skaven, and there's certainly not the same kind of pressure on the points that you have with other armies. I can still feel like I can pack in 40 monks and 20 acolytes and
right,
plenty of battle line and a bell and a vermin lord and the vortex and so on. And you're not having to make the same kind of compromises as you do in other lists.
Right, exactly, and that's ultimately the problem. Yeah. It's better than it was. There's a little more pressure, but in my mind, still not enough. What when I look at an army like Nurgle or something, I think on the whole that they did a really good job of hitting the sort of nail there of where like you have to kind of really make a choice of what your army is about. You can't pursue every strategy simultaneously. Same with like Beasts of Chaos, I think is another one that I really like how they did that. This one you can still I still feel like I'm not ever really struggling in the same way. And so,
well, just to supplement that, I mean, I think one of the issues with the book is that unlike most books, in particular the Gitz book, there's huge amounts of cross synergy that ignores keywords. I mean, the worst offender is probably the Bigger Dust Injector, which works on Scryer, but works on Plague Monks, or the Plague Furnace gives Battle Shock immunity to Clan Rats and Rat Ogres, as well as the intended Plague Monks, and Death Frenzy, which used to be a Verminous special, obviously extending that to Plague Monks. So the fact that you can, that in itself makes it easy to tick all the boxes because you've got, a lower number of buff pieces that will work on multiple recipients of those buffs.
I agree. Like they needed to play a little more keyword bingo, or if it was going to stay like that, then stuff just needs to be more expensive. Like let's go one of those directions, right? Yeah,
precisely.
So yeah, I agree. The Vermin Lords largely went up again, around 20 points, with the Warp Seer going up 40.
Yep.
The Warp Seer, he's the big offender. I had a feeling he was going to go to 300. I think he's actually worth more than that still. Like fighting wise, he's kind of a wet napkin. Like he doesn't actually do much in combat, but he's highly survivable. He's a good double caster with a great spell, awesome utility piece, good command ability. Like he ticks a lot of utility boxes that to me makes him absolutely worth it. Like he's a hard piece to remove. You can make him even harder to remove if you want. And he's still too cheap. Like he's another one. He probably should have been 320. I just feel like they got almost there and should have just kept going a little bit more. Yeah.
You wouldn't have been surprised if it had been 340.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't have. And by the way, I don't think that would be terrible in any way. Like
you'd probably still see them. Just it wouldn't be the almost auto include that he has been.
Yeah, he was like so vastly undercosted.
Yeah,
it's comically undercosted. Plague Priest on Plague Furnace went up. I don't know if that's right or wrong. I actually think that's probably where the Plague Priest on Plague Furnace should be when you look at him alone. Okay. Where we're going to have a problem is what we get to in just a moment. Okay. I don't think that
you go first on monks then.
All right. That's fine. I'll take the heat for this one. Okay. So, I mean, I think the other Vermin Lords were probably fine. Like their moves were probably correct. Like the Warbringer at 280s, probably fine. Again, I would rather the Warbringer be at 280 and have his dreaded death frenzy be keyword limited. You know what I mean? Like that would actually be the right place for that to be.
Yeah.
Given his sort of capabilities. So again, why did that move off of that? I don't get it. So whatever. All right, Plague Monks. Let's talk about Plague Monks. They went from 70-240 to 80-280. In what universe is this the appropriate cost for these things? I do not understand what math we're using here. And again, this is as a player of Skaven. Okay. Yeah. Like I love this army. I've been with this army. This was my first real army. I have stuck with Skaven for 22 years. Okay. I've seen ups. I've seen downs. I've seen units be good. I've seen units be bad. It's fine. I never get angry about a unit. Okay. Like whatever. Now, that being said, these guys can quite regularly get somewhere in the range of 5 to 7 attacks per model.
Yep.
They can produce bonus damage and rend. They have the previously alluded to currently overlap with things like Death Frenzy and Dreaded Death Frenzy, as well as a host of other buffs they can get. Yeah. And like they are very synergistic pieces, right? Very, very synergistic pieces. They're Witch Elf level synergistic pieces. Okay.
Yeah.
And yet they are bargain basement prices. This was just a bad call. Where should these guys be? Personal taste. Like if you were going to tell me, like Nico, you came to me and said, Vince, we're not going to change anything else. We're going to leave them just as synergistic. Okay. And they can still have all the same capabilities. Where should they be? Right. I would say bare mins they're 100 for 10 and like whatever 360 or 380 or something, whatever the cheap horde discount is for 40. Like bare mins, they're 100 for 10. How these are in any universe less than 100 for 10, I do not know. I don't know.
I'm agreeing with the. Well, I think maybe not 380, but certainly they could have been more. I mean, to be honest, my dream outcome here was just had a small person invade the stage.
That's okay.
My dream outcome, he's obviously very upset about the Plague Monks, but my dream outcome here was actually a War Scroll rewrite. So
oh god, yes. I mean, look, in a perfect world, you're right.
Yeah, get rid of the two procs on 6s. I mean, particularly the one which is like +1 damage on a 6/2 wound, I think it was, because that one means that could just as easily be an extra hit and it would mathematically be the same, but it wouldn't require you to fish out 4 different categories of hits and wounds, which is quite incredibly slow. So yeah, a full War Scroll rewrite would have been nice.
Well, it bothers me to no end that we had the time to do that and didn't do it. Let's go a step farther. Why are the sticks and double knives like a different thing? One profile. Exactly. That should be one profile called sticks and knives, right? And it should have
imaginable. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
These guys pile in on death, having already destroyed something, but then like they've got to stay in coherencies. They move like 1 inch forward, and then maybe some of them their 1 inch reach weapon is in range, and some their 2 inch reach weapon is in range. And then once the first 10 have been removed, they lose a +1 to hit buff, and then the next 10 they lose the +1 to wound buff. It's it's an enormous time sink. You basically just got to say, okay, let's just take this target unit off, unless you're unlucky enough that actually is worth rolling.
Absolutely. Like these guys, and the reason, by the way, I said 100, 380, and I like the idea of having an almost non-existent horde discount for them, is because they are like, you take these guys in 40s, right? That's where they're useful because that's where they get the +1 to hit and +1 to wound.
The minimum number is almost, I mean, maybe if you were playing pure Pestilence, you might use them for screens of 10, but
right. Yeah. So
compared to Clan Rats.
Exactly. And so to me, it feels like you're just the very minimal horde discount is just openly admitting that like these guys are super strong in a horde, right? Like that's how you're going to take them. We'll throw you a dime here or back or whatever, but that's what you get. You get a nickel, actually, and the the trick here is I agree with you. Like, this should have been a whole massive rescroll or war scroll rewrite, because there's a version of these that could exist at 80 points, right? Like, if you got rid of the ad rend, got rid of the ad damage, and just made them like crazy stabbers who generated like a decent number of attacks, not 7 per model, because that's just, what are we doing with our lives? 7 per model with like, you know, on like 3s and 3s or 3s and 4s with their full horde buff, and re-rolling both if they're in the range of, you know, the 2 different things they can get. We've entered ludicrous speed at that point, right? Like, why? And it's not like that stuff is that hard to pull off, by the way. It's like, be near a thing, use a command ability, cast a thing. Okay, well, the cast a thing maybe is the hard one to get off sometimes.
Yeah, it's a 3-up, I think. Yeah,
so it's just like, okay. You know, great. This is such a missed opportunity. I can't even, they're still going to be seen in too large a numbers. Fix it.
Writing some lists, I think they're still edging out the Storm Vermin by a fair margin, particularly because of the flexibility you get in having that, you know, that cheaper unit that you can potentially fit something else in.
Right. Yep.
Not even though, you know, I like retreat charge a lot, but it's hard to get away from the monks.
It is, and that's a shame. Yeah, the rattling gun went down 10. Cool.
Yep.
Good. Great. Nice. Rattling guns are cool. That's a neat piece of and no one, like, I don't think there's anybody out there who's angry about Skaven weapon teams, because they're like a joke to get rid of. You know, they're fun. Yeah. So cool. Storm Vermin went down, as you mentioned. They went down to 124.50.
And I
like them too. I think that's probably about where they should be. It's just, again, they fail in the comparison to monks. Like, that's probably actually the right number for them. It's just, it's the wrong number compared to plague monks.
Yeah, they're kind of like the sort of rough equivalent of Bestigor, but I suppose retreat and charge is probably generally worse than run and charge. But on the other hand, they're on the 25 mil bases, which is huge, and the 2-inch reach. So there's a lot to love there, but monks, I think, still outperform them. What I do quite like is just using these as 10s. So like, now the same cost for 20 clan rats or 10 Storm Vermin. I think a line of 10 Storm Vermin is actually pretty handy as a screen unit that can actually do a bit of work.
I actually agree completely. It makes like the Verminous Claw Pack battalion, which was often something I would include to just sort of get a battalion in there, you know? Yeah. It makes it, you know, cheaper in a nice way. It dropped by like 20 points, not the biggest deal, but it makes it so you're going like, let's say a 40, a 20, and a 10, right? And then I can still set up my screens kind of how I want. And yeah, and because the problem is clan rats don't actually ever kill anything. They're not actually an offensive piece. They're just warm bodies that are literally there to stand there and die and retreat and claim objectives or something. Whereas Storm Vermin, actually, they can do work. They can kill things. So that's cool. And then finally, the changes on the all the Warp Cog Convocation engine covens, which was cool. They all got cheaper, considerably so. And that's great. These actually maybe could be used now. So like, maybe there's a neat scryer list running around somewhere with people putting this stuff together, and it's rolling out like Doom wheels and stuff like that. That's fun.
Yeah, I think from a scryer perspective, I was worrying that things like Jezzails and the Warp Lightning Cannon might be going up because they're certainly some of the most efficient shooting options in the game. But frankly, I think the game needs shooting, so I'd be slow to nerf a shooting unit before nerfing something like monks. So I'm quite pleased that they haven't changed.
Yeah, I agree. If anything, I wouldn't have been surprised to see, like, if Jezzails went to 150 or something. Okay, I guess, you know, like, I could see that. But again, I agree. Like, there is a value to shooting in the game. We keep wanting to punch shooting in the face, and then we get angry when there's no shooting in the game. And these like 5 wound buff heroes rule the day. And it's like, well, these 5 wound buff heroes are too strong. And it's like, well, if you wouldn't complain every time somebody shoots a gun in this game because you're sad that you got your toys taken off by shooting, you know, this wouldn't necessarily be happening. So yeah, I'm fine with that. I think maybe the Acolytes could have went up 10. I think that would have been my solution within the Scryer stuff. Like, put them at 70 something, you know, 70, some kind of horde discount.
Even without the gondola.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, agreed. That was an important fix to them, but I still think they're they're probably actually a 70-point unit. I mean, they're
really efficient.
Yeah. I mean, they die in bucket loads if anything looks at them funny, right? So that's fine. Like if you misposition these guys and let anything touch them, they explode just instantaneously. But they're, yeah, it's fine. I'll be interested to see if some people start rolling out some scryer lists. I think that the changes to all these engine coven things actually makes that there might be a list or two out there. I haven't done the hard work on that yet, but it's interesting. So, and plus I want to see more Doom Wheels. I think Doom Wheel is the most underrated thing in the Skaven army right now. So there you go.
Yeah, I think that's solid with that shooting attack.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Next up, from one big hit to another.
Yep.
The Flesh Eater Courts. All right. So first off, here with our errata, the Heaving Masses got changed to more than once per phase. You can't use it more than once per phase. Okay, cool. And then, yep, fine.
The big one.
What it should have been. And then Savage Strike. The short answer here is this unit fights the start of combat got changed to this unit fights at the start of combat if they charged.
Yep.
Okay. Big change.
Like
in impact, right? Because now if they get stuck in or have to retreat or something charges them, okay, they're not fighting first anymore. It's a big deal.
It gives armies that previously had, melee armies that couldn't take that kind of punch, an actual answer to this thing by being able to charge them in their turn. Whereas previously, as long as the effect player had any CPs lying around, even in your turn, you could charge into it with a big solid hammer unit and watch as the Flappy destroyed it entirely with double activation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question is, did this plus the minor points moves, which we'll get to in a second, plus the general suppression of command point generation, and that you can only start with buying one, did this combination, did this soup of stuff weaken FEC enough, or should it have gone farther?
The consensus seems to be probably, which isn't the best answer, but yeah, I mean, as I say, it does open up that weak spot in your turn for damaging it. On the other hand, it's still got, and it's been confirmed in the FAQ, that if you kill it, it can still fight twice. With reroll hits with that horrendous Maw attack with possibly an extra 2 or 3 attacks on death, which means that at best you're sort of trading your hammer unit for it, and you really got to make sure you kill it with your hammer first straight away. You can't rely on the second unit that you charge into it killing it, because if it gets to go, then it will destroy both of your hammers. So and at best you're sort of trading them off. So I think the army's still in a strong position.
Yeah, I agree.
I think Skaven possibly are a fairly tough matchup for it, because you've got the screens and you've got the shooting. Slaanesh potentially as well, but I don't think Feck are going anywhere. They're still going to be strong. I think a sort of perhaps unexpected consequence of this FAQ is it actually removes probably the hardest counter to the Flappy, which is basically going into it with something like a Loon Boss on Mangler with the Doppelganger Cloak, because previously you'd activate that at the start of the combat phase, then the Flappy would have to activate Savage Strike, because it's not an optional rule, and then he would be unable to target you, but he'd still have to pile in, and having done so, he's unable to fight on death. So then when the Mangler hopefully kills it, it's a clean kill without the Mangler also dying. But now that's not actually an option, because in their turn, they'll activate Savage Strike before you can use Doppelganger Cloak, and in your turn, Savage Strike doesn't work because they're not charging you in your turn.
Right.
So the Doppelganger hard counter is actually gone. But there are other answers out there. Khorne with the 6-inch pile-ins and such. But I think the army is still in a solid place. They've got decent endless spells. They've got bodies. They've got efficiently pointed double casters and great spell synergies. So yeah, I think they're still right up there.
Yeah, I agree. To me, this feels like it's good. Like, this is a very positive change. I'm super happy to see it. This guy was not fun in a box, right? And my complaint with this guy is and always has been, I don't care for a minute that this won a bunch of tournaments or makes life tough for competitive people or people if like people like us who play a lot, right? Like, fine. We can probably figure out ways around it. You just walked through an entire way around it, right? And like, that's this sort of high level complexity. I'm not saying stuff shouldn't be addressed for that reason. It should. Okay. You should absolutely seek to not have things off kilter at that high level of play. But that's not what, to me, made this an emergency, right? That's not what made it like a Sev 1 issue over it being like a Sev 2 issue that still needs to be addressed quickly. Sure. What made this such a problem is this is like it was the worst play experience for new people and less experienced people. The less experience you have, the more this used to just ruin your day. And you had no idea how to fight around it or what to do, right?
Well, some armies literally could do nothing because you can't just let it rampage for 5 turns.
Right.
And if you don't have a strike first or some other trick like a 6-inch spire, then you will just lose your unit on average, because with that, the more attack with the rerolls, it will do 12, maybe more mortal wounds and a lot of it regular damage to any hammer you try and throw at it before.
Exactly.
So, as you say, your casual opponent is dumbfounded by this thing unless they've got a hard counter or a soft counter tool that only, say, half the armies in the game even have access to.
Right. And I don't mean to play the think of the children card. I mean, I understand that's what I'm doing, right? Yeah. But it's true, because I don't think we should have just like baked in horrible play experiences for new players. Like, that just doesn't seem a good thing. So they ended that, because like, now you can off turn charge into it with a hammer, blow it up, and yeah, it's going to probably pull that hammer down with it if there are CPs, because it can still use its fight twice on death thing.
Yep.
Okay, but at least you can kill the dumb thing.
Yes.
So fine. Is it still too good? In my opinion, yes. Like, here's what I think happened. I think what probably happened here is we adjusted it enough for most of the competitive meta to now be able to basically handle it and understand that, because you'll understand the trade-offs, you'll understand what you can throw at it to kill it, what you can't, and so on and so forth. Like, people who play a lot will be able to do that math and will mostly be able to handle this now. But it's still often going to be a bad play experience for a new player when they don't chaff, because I see a lot of new players not know how to chaff, right? So this thing plows into the main good thing in their army, blows it up, they charge it with their other good thing in their army, kill it, and then lose that to the double fight. And it's like, and then they have nothing good left in their army. And they're like, oh, well, that was fun, I guess.
Here come the ghouls and the other flappy. Yeah.
Right. So like, but I think this is positive. I think this probably could have went a little farther. I would have liked to see, I'm not sure what that change would have been. You could probably construct 5 different changes I would like, you know what I mean? That had to do with not triggering the double fight on death or, whatever, like there's probably multiple things that could have been done there. I mean, the advantage is he is fighting at his weakest profile when he's fighting on death, which does have, it has some impact, but
the more is not affected, which is
right.
Sad.
Yep. Because I mean, and in the end, you're just fishing for 6s anyways then. So there you go. That's fine. Overall, it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah.
It's where we are. It's better. Probably not better enough, but it's better. So take what I could get. Should it have gone farther? Yes. Okay. Abhorrent Archregent up 40. Abhorrent Ghoul King that no one took, but all right, he's up 20. Our Kumquat buddy that we just spent a lot of time talking about, he's up 20. How is he still cheaper than the guy on Royal Zombie Dragon? I do not understand the world we live in where A is cheaper than B.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Yeah, totally. I mean, it makes sense for flesh eaters to have, the best for its points hammer monster out there.
Right.
But the Feck Flappy is still, a cut more than a cut above its nearest competitors in terms
Absolutely.
of the combination of like reroll hits, 6s do an extra hit, 6s do 6 mortal wounds, and then some of the best things in the game in terms of fight first, fight twice, and fight on death. It's the whole, imagine if Plague Monks had the one that they're missing of those, if they had fight twice.
Right. Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is still it's still going to be very challenging I think they're still going to be up there in competitive games and on top tables.
I agree. I think that overall, this guy, I would have rather seen some other knock on Gristlegore specifically. Okay. Like, I don't want to solve this completely through points. Points is a rather inaccurate hammer for this, right?
It would have been wrong to have gone to like 550 points on it, but not touch Gristlegore. That would have
exactly. That's not a positive change. So like, I think I would have rather seen something else in Gristlegore, maybe where like you can only activate the fight at the start of combat once a game or something like that. Maybe that was the other solution. Okay. Or probably you can't double fight on death. Okay. Yeah. Like if those were the two changes and you made this guy 440, I'd be like, okay. All right. I'm good with that. Like he's still an incredibly destructive monster. Like there aren't many things in the game that put out this level of damage ever. And the fact that
Scarbrand on a good day,
right? Who doesn't zip across the board at 20 inches flying, right? Like,
really, he's much slower. Yeah.
Bloodtide
can come along, but still slower.
Yes, and most importantly, Scarbrand doesn't fly because his poor little torn wings.
His bird wings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of this, or in terms of sheer destructive power, it's sort of this, or your 40 Plague Monks, or your 30 Witch Elves with all the buffs, or it's that kind of thing.
Right. It's up at that level. Okay. Crypt Horror's down 10. Cool. All right. Nice. Fine. Neat. I hope to see, upon hope that more people start playing like Blister Skin and stuff like that. And so maybe we see, other kinds of things like Flares more, or we see other things like Crypt Horrors more in the, what is it? The Morgaunt or whatever is the one that uses Crypt Horrors, I think, heavily. I'm trying to remember all their things, but yeah, fine. Like those armies are strong, but I think they also are like fair. Like Blister Skin is good, but I think it's fair. It's just
I think it's really hard to dislodge Gristlegore as the best option. I mean, you might see more horrors, which would be nice, but the strength of Gristlegore compared to the other lodges is
still off kilter. Yes, I agree. Yeah. And then all the spells up like 10. Okay.
Which is good because I think those are all extremely strong ones.
The Barricade is quite strong, being that you can get it in a mercenary company, and it can form part of your wall attack strategy. I already saw some people playing around with this in the South London team. I am very interested to see if wall meta evolves. There was this period in Magic where...
Sorry.
No, that's fine. There was this period in Magic where people figured out early on that they could play like blue-white control. And it was basically like cheap counter spells and walls, like walls of swords, flying walls, stuff like that. They would just get in the way cheap and block their opponent from being able to damage them, while they then like countered the relevant things and built to like one kill con. And I almost wonder if we're going to hit like wall meta here. Like, are people going to figure out you can stick Barricade and Palisade and blah and blah and blah all into an army and just literally just wall enemy armies in?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a good photo of Simon's Devoted of Sigmar being walled off by the Change Host, and potentially they could chuck in the Barricade here as you say, as a mercenary company or and the like. I think even the Stampede does solid damage. I think the range is like 26 effective, which is decent as well. So
and obviously the Chalice is pretty potent healing, as previously mentioned. If you don't kill the Flappy, the Chalice will probably make sure will make sure that he has no wounds. So there you go.
Yeah.
All right. And then over here, this is where we've mentioned this like 10 times already, but can a call to war Gristlegore hero pile in and then attack in reaction to being slain? Can I use Feeding Frenzy to fight again after using Call to War? They just clarified. This was the read before I think most people had, but they clarified that, yeah, it's fine. You interrupt the game sequence. This feels not aligned with the Khorne answer, I guess. Like, I understand the piece of paper they've slid between these two rulings. Okay. Like, I get it.
Has fought for the first time wording, which I think is unique to the Khorne one.
Right. So, like, I get it. I get how they specifically carved out these two answers to be distinct. Like, okay, letter of the law, that's fine, right?
Yeah.
But
sorry.
No, I was going to say it doesn't super make sense. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not the only example of that. I mean, I put in an FAQ a couple of days ago saying, a couple of weeks ago saying, there are quite a lot of fight twice rules out there. Almost all of them are the same, but the Slaanesh one has the distinction that you have to be within 3 inches when you do the fight twice, which excludes the possibility that you charge that turn and then as normally you be able to pile in an attack twice. So that reduces how far you can go, and if you kill everything within 3 inches, then you can't do it. I'm sure there's zero sympathy for Slaanesh in the audience, but it is a sort of weird inconsistency that will catch some people out compared to Man Hells or the Feck fight twice, which would work. If you kill everything within 3 inches of you, you can still move 3 and then hit something 3 inches away from that point with your 3-inch range weapon. So
no, it is funny. It's funny you mention it. It literally happened to me in the last game I played. Where like whatever. my keeper went into something, blew it up, and then couldn't pile in a second time because the other people were sort of walled off and like 4 inches away. And I was like, oh, like if I could have spent the CP, I could have obviously gotten to that too. But it's just funny you mentioned that thing, and it literally just happened to me. And I was like, oh yeah, that doesn't work. Okay, cool.
I'm glad it's not theoretical.
It is not theoretical. It's very real. People who set up proper chaff walls, as this person did, although like the thing that they used for chaff, I don't agree with, but that's fine. I get why they did it. Okay. He had a Morngul out in front, and he like used it in between terrain to like block me off, so I couldn't get it all the rest of his heroes and his meat. And I was like,
depravity to me.
It's fine. I just looked at that. I was like, man, I'll take that 9 depravity or whatever. I'm good. We're fine. Just. So he was, I think, hoping that the neg one would make more of a difference, right? The neg one to hit. So I get it. No, like Slaanesh is very sensitive to penalties to hit. So, okay. Unfortunately for him, I think I rolled like pretty hot on the 6s. So what do you do?
Yeah, that can happen.
That can happen. Ironically, that was a game where of all the rest of my heroes, I only got 1 locus off on the 4+. The only locus I got off was the keepers the entire game. Like I got 1 off from one other hero that whole game. 4-ups are swingy. It's flipping a coin. All right. Anywho, Fire Slayers. This was still the stuff from before. I don't think any of this actually changed, and they didn't have points. Like this was the previous changes. It's still labeled May, and these aren't new.
I don't think there was a lot for Fire Slayers. I think it was just clarifying the prayers.
Yeah, just can they do them? Yep. Is it a prayer? Nope. Okay. Fire Slayer's done. That's a non-controversial one. All right. And then let's see, core rules. Now, here's what's interesting about the core rules, because I want to give a shout out here. When you look at the core rules initially, you look at it and say, oh, this is actually like a lot of changes they made, but these aren't. They just did what we had called for last time. Because like, I don't remember what show it was. It was in response to like maybe the Khorne FAQ, maybe like Fire Slayers or Slaanesh. Like it was in that time period. I made a point of asking, look, if you're going to make rules changes in like the Khorne FAQ that has knock-on impacts into the core rules, please update the core rules in some way, because no one's coming to look at Khorne to learn about the singular and the plural, right? Or whatever.
Absolutely. And like the running joke became that every FAQ that came out for a different battle tome would end up buffing the Feck battle tome.
Right.
You wouldn't find them in the Feck book. But yeah, that's exactly right. And my clubmate Will has, I think he'd asked that question as well, and he wanted to make that very point that a lot of the core rule changes or apparent changes here, the magenta is really consolidation, and I think maybe a bit of tidying up of the wording, but mostly just consolidation.
Yep, exactly. Like a lot of this is stuff that had been answered. This is really just aggregation of these other things that they had answered piecemeal in the various FAQs, and they brought them all up here. For example, the Bloodletter one was a Khorne FAQ, obviously, exactly. that they brought in here. So I was actually
together
100%. This is good. Like, good work. Thank you for listening. I'm actually super pleased you did. Thank you. Wonderful. Bring them back in. I do love this. The at the double interact with like Seeker's 2d6 charge. It's like, no, you're just screwed, dog.
Well, unlucky. Nice try.
Yeah. It does what it says. Like, it's one of those things where you read the rules and there is an obvious answer. Like, there really wasn't. If you just read the rules, it had an answer. It just feels like it shouldn't work that way. And you were kind of hoping that it didn't. But no, it does. It works exactly the way it says.
For when you need to cross the entire table, turn 1.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Look, I wanted to be able to run 12 on a command point. Okay. What's the problem? No, it's fine. Obviously the big one with this is the thing they brought in from Slaanesh, which is this thing, this one. The Unit A has been made to fight at the end, and then it pulls in Unit B, and it depends on whose turn it is. I just want to, since you are excellent at parsing this kind of stuff, and you've written about this, I despise this. Okay, from hell's heart, I spit at these rules because I get it. Like, I read it and I was like, okay, I understand what's going on and why this is here. Like, because we have literally painted ourselves into this corner with rules, and we're now forced to make this convoluted thing that, again, is completely logical. Like, if you sit down and think it through, it makes perfect sense given the architectural framework that this is how it would work. That doesn't make it good.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. I mean, I think there was an easier solution, which I'll come on to, but the thinking behind this and why it's so counterintuitive is because you take a concept of alternating activations in effectively the body of the combat phase, and then you suddenly are still doing these, or kind of still doing these activations, but now you're doing them in the end of the combat phase. You're doing them simultaneously, and then suddenly the rule about simultaneous rules kicks in, namely that the player who's the active player whose turn it is does all of their stuff first, and it's not optional. It's not they get to choose the order as it is in 40k. It's they do everything first. So if both of you are fighting in the end of the combat phase because Slaanesh has locus someone, but a Gitz army has used Itchy Nuisance back, then if it's the Gitz turn, then the Gitz unit would fight before the Slaanesh. Sorry, yes, the Slaanesh
that's right. Mm-hmm. And if the Gitz unit moved and pulled in the end step and pulled somebody who wasn't previously in combat in, then the Slaanesh player would get to fight. But if it were the other way around and the Gitz player pulled in somebody, then they wouldn't.
Exactly. Okay. And it is, I just think that the easiest solution there would be to, back in March, they released there's a community article about, with a very useful diagram showing the different parts of the start part, the during part, and the end part. And they sort of gradually muddy the waters between these different parts. Like initially when Gristlegore came out, you could read those parts very strictly and in a way to limit how good the Flesh Eater Courts, the Gristlegore was, by saying that, it couldn't use this rule because it it applies in the during part and not in the start part and so on. And they blurred the lines to let those things work in a quite a narrow way, but they blurred it there, and now they're blurring it here because there's no reason why. I mean, I had always thought that normal combat phase activations could only be done in the during part, the middle part of the phase. They couldn't happen in the end. So if your Bone Splitter cavalry did their fight again at the end of the combat phase, then that was it. It's
Right.
over. No more. There's no more regular activations to be done. You move on to the battle shock phase. But they've, I think, perhaps because they see it as maybe it's sort of counter the sort of cinematic feel of the game. It feels a bit odd that these people are standing there and not fighting. So maybe that inclines them to let them fight. But it does lead to this rather complicated FAQ here.
Yeah, it's just the structure. I liken this to like the materials that we've laid on top of the structure of this house are just too strong. Like the framework isn't strong enough to hold it. You know what I mean? Like we've piled stones onto a wooden framework and the wood is just buckling under this weight. That's what we've done with the architecture here of the sort of combat phase. Now, I mean, look, to be fair, okay, this rarely comes up. I mean, to be honest, right? Like let's think about the number of games we play, the number of combats we fight. This exact situation is a pretty rarefied thing, right? So fine. Okay. I accept that. But that being said, that doesn't make me hate that this kind of thing is still necessary. It feels like we could do a round 2 of sort of combat phase cleanup in light of all this. And it just, and we could sort of smooth all this out, right? Like really put some structure around this in a way that's strong enough to support it. I don't know exactly what that means. I'd have to sit down and try to think about it in light of all the different knock-on elements. But it feels like this is a thing that would be worth putting thought into, because this is the part of the game right now that has the most sort of murkiness to it, right?
Yeah, and it feels like most of the active questions have been answered, but it's still quite a lot to work through, and you really got to play those kind of armies and do those sort of opposing combinations to sort of get your head around it all.
Yeah, and again, not to play the think of the children card, but I'm going to. Because this is yet another one of those really annoying things that can call a new player out, right? And what I'm always conscious of is I don't want to ever get back to the 8th edition style book, right? Where every rules interaction and corner case is spelled out in this huge rules document, and you feel like to learn the game, you got to read 300 pages of rules, and it's a nightmare. I'm okay with certain things like this. In the same way, I don't need to learn all that stuff to play Magic, but Magic has this resource where I can go look up these complex interactions and find an answer. The core implementation is simple, but what that means is that every so often you need to go back and make sure that the simple framework you've done still supports the design space you've explored, because there is this cyclical nature to writing game rules, which is you write a rule, it creates design space, you explore that design space, it opens up additional design space, right? So you're constantly building on top of what you've done. And the foundation has to, so sometimes you got to go back and reinforce the foundation some. And by the way, that doesn't always mean adding more rules or clarifications. Sometimes it means stripping stuff out and simplifying it, right?
Yeah, because we've come a long way from the days of Quicksilver Potion and Nasty Skulkers.
Right. Exactly.
7 or 8 factions that have got some form of play in the activation wars now. So
yeah. So yeah, it's, it's a thing that I think if they wanted to make a big impact over the next year, or maybe as they're looking toward the next General's Handbook, again, I don't think any of this is like, it's ruining the game. No, it's not. Again, I play plenty of games. This kind of crap rarely comes up. And I mean, I play with armies that that participate in the activation wars. Because apparently I am a horrible cheater. Like I do not understand how this happened. I collected Doc and Slanesh because I liked them, and accidentally these armies became good. And then they're trying to make Ironjawz good. Stop trying to make my armies good. I don't like this. I'm trying to play bad armies over here.
It's the opposite of what they do to Tom's armies.
Tom collects an army. It is the surest sign it's just going to get whacked. Like I collect the armies that I think look pretty. I don't know what to tell you. I defend myself with Doc in saying that I only own a total of 20 like witch bodies, and I own 20 Sisters of Slaughter and 0 witch elves. I own all snakes. So my not power gaming credential, I think, credentials are intact.
Well established. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. But I feel dirty collecting all these armies. All right. So anyway, there was and then most of the rest of this, I think, is just, again, stuff that was brought in. I can't think of anything else in here that was highly impactful. Is there anything else in here that you thought was super relevant? I can't think of anything else that was like absolutely off the charts. I read and thought, okay. Most of this was just
agreed. Yep.
Yeah. This was an interesting one we can discuss a minute.
Oh yeah, actually, this is. I mean, they'd answered this previously, I think, in Fire Slayers, but a bit surprising one.
Yeah. So the relevant part of the discussion here I want to have is blah blah blah. This is what allies work like. Okay, cool. That's fine. Your allied wizards don't get a spell lore. But the unit could be affected by the spell. I think most of this is pretty common sense in how everybody thought about it, right? Like this is all kind of pretty straightforward and how I've always thought about allies and how they work.
I mean, maybe a little counterintuitive things like, Stormcast prayers working on, or some Stormcast prayers working on allies and some Fire Slayer prayers working on allies. I mean, spells you kind of understand, it's a spell, but prayers you kind of think, the god's only going to help out his followers, not some random mercs.
Yeah. I think that I think he's helping out the Stormcast. I can justify that one in my mind because I'm like, he's helping out the Stormcast dude and trusting the Stormcast dude to know what he's doing.
Yeah, it's not a huge point. It's not too jarring.
Right. But this one was interesting. In addition, any scenery rules for faction-specific terrain features apply to allied units during the battle. Now, obviously, the relevant part there is what is a scenery rule, right? Because a scenery rule for faction-specific terrain is the very specific cadre of things, right?
Such as obstacle or cover.
Exactly. So, like, let's talk about, for example, let's talk about like a null hole, right?
Yep.
So a null hole is a single terrain feature. It's an obstacle. Okay. So your allies will also treat it as an obstacle. Now, the scenery rules, they wrap up under like tunnels through reality. Okay, well, you can't do that because you're not a Skaven Tide unit or a Skaven Tide hero. So, okay, cool. Right. But also falling under there is, Aura of the Horned Rat. Now, in this case, it says Skaven Tide units treat this terrain feature as having the arcane scenery rule. Other units treat this terrain feature as having the deadly scenery rule. Okay. So again, that one feels like it's cut pretty cleanly, where the arcane is only helping the Skaven Tide person, but the deadly would apply to your allies.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
fine.
far, so good.
So far, so good, right?
I worry there's a counterexample coming.
The answer is like, I don't know. I haven't gone through all of them yet, but I'm trying to figure out if there is a counterexample out there. I'm actually, I raised this because I went and immediately looked at Nullhole because of course I did. Right. And I was like, is there a counterexample out there where they didn't construe the benefits so cleanly?
Maybe
right?
the Chaos, the totem, what's it called? The the altar stone that they worship.
I thought about that one too. Yeah, the herd stone. So I just brought it up, and that one is construed well because the neg 1 for save rolls applies to everything, and then exempts Beasts of Chaos units specifically.
Yeah, that's good.
Right, and the Locus of Savagery that makes you immune to battle shock is specifically keyed to Beasts of Chaos units. So, yeah, I don't know if there's an example out there, but that is an interesting. What's the name of that dumb Nurgle tree?
Feculent Narmor.
That's what it's called. I try not to remember anything from Nurgle ever. Nurgle units get the run and charge. Yeah, and nope, it's good. Like everything I've seen that would still work, where basically the allies would only get the negatives and not the positives.
Other than the obstacle rule, usually, but
yeah. Other than the obstacle rule, yes, they can all take advantage of these things as obstacles. So, like,
that might have been what prompted this question.
Sure,
I think I know someone who did ask that.
So there you go. It is interesting that you can take your allied whatever, and go, and they could be benefiting from things like hiding behind the herdstone as an obstacle or whatever, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. Gits.
Do you mind
Gits.
some water?
No, go right ahead. I'll set up the gits while you're going and getting water. You go right ahead. We've been going for a while here. So when we get to the gits, no changes in the core errata that are new, but obviously what we had is points changes. Yay, points changes. And I actually think a lot of these were very good. I like a lot of these. We could maybe go a little farther with some of these, but these are pretty solid. The shooters went down 10. The Dankhold Trog boss went down 30 because he was 300, if memory serves. The Loon boss on Mango Squig down 20, Web Spinner down 20, and then all the other Arachnaroks down, varying amounts, basically. So 10, 20 points. I like all of these changes. And then obviously there was also, whoa, shot past it. Sorry. These load really weird. And then obviously the Gavapalooza down, the Fellwater and Rockoth Troggoths down slightly, but in a very good amount. I'm happy to see the trolls come down. They were, I really want to see some more troll armies on the table. I think that's wonderful. And then the spells all went up just slightly at 10 points each. So, okay, cool. Gavapalooza dudes all together now is 200. Yeah, trolls cheaper. I mean, and the Dankhold Troggoth. I'm sorry, he went down as well, but he probably needs to keep going. Yeah, overall, these I think the gets changes were really positive.
Agreed.
Like these are all going the right direction. I think I'm kind of super excited about the spider changes. I think those were really good. I felt like the spiders, the big Arachnaroks, were always a little overcosted. I'm excited about all the troll changes. I think those are wonderful. Yeah,
I think the caster Arachnarok I think was fair value. I mean the buff to +1 and cast and unbind as a bubble was really nifty. And now it's potentially a bargain at 280. The Loon Mangler looks a lot better relative to the Vermin Lords at his reduced price as well.
Yeah, him going down to 280 was a big deal. I don't know if I mentioned him. Oh, and I'm sorry. The other two, I didn't realize the other two spells went down, and then the moon. I knew the mushroom went up. I thought that
really good utility spells and they're solid ones.
Yes, I don't know if I mentioned the Loon boss, but him going down to 280 is awesome.
In terms of the Troggoths, I mean, I really like the stone Troggoths. Sorry, rock guy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because they're converging on the sort of 10 points per wound marker, which would be like 120 for them. And they got a ward save and they got -2 rend. I think they're becoming usable. I think the thing that drags them down is that, and in some ways it's got worse, is that the the Trog boss, the command ability is so weak, and in some ways it's got even worse because now everyone has got access to reroll ones to hit for one targeted unit as a generic command ability.
Yeah,
so it's a bubble. In fact, is it even a bubble? It might even be just pick a unit, but it certainly makes that a lot weaker.
I agree. Here's what I'll say. At least the tax went down in cost.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we all know that the Dankhold Trog boss is just he's just not worth those points. Like, he's not. There's not a universe where he's worth those points. Nope.
Yeah.
He's just
not even close.
Yeah.
So he's up the Eidolon and the couple of others that I think were misses where they just didn't go far enough.
Right. Yep. But I still think overall this is like a really positive change for sort of troll armies, right? Or people who want to use, even people who just want to splash trolls in.
Yeah. This book is good for letting you do those blended armies. And they look good as well.
Agreed. So overall, I think these Gits changes were good. I think agreed. A couple places could have went a little farther. The Dankhold Trogoth, just the normal one, could have probably been at least 180. The Trog boss could have probably come down to like 240, maybe even lower. I don't know, but like cheaper than 270 or whatever the heck he landed on. But I'm glad to see it. So cool. Good. Yeah. All positive directions. And I feel like this is good. I think Gits are a very versatile army. I think they got a lot of interesting builds that can come out of there, and I'm hoping this puts some more different stuff on the table. So,
I'm very excited to be playing them again.
Yeah, I love that the Skitterstrand went down, by the way, because he's like one of my favorites. And I know that seems stupid, but I've talked about the pie in the face army where you just unburrow Skitterstrands and charge them round one and trip and pin the enemy army in with giant 160 mil bases, and it makes me laugh. So, not a good army, but I'm glad it's cheaper now.
Yeah, it's an option.
And then, I don't think there was anything else in the designer commentary. I think that one stayed the same.
Yep.
Daughters didn't really have anything, right? The daughters were just,
I think it was consolidation, maybe.
Yeah, I can't think of anything that just these that was already there. That was already there. Like, those are actually old. And yeah.
Yep.
So, and then the Slanesh was just the Slanesh one. It didn't actually update with a new thing. It had originally been mismarked, but it's actually didn't get changed. So, and that's it. Thus endeth.
Have we not done the scenery one?
Oh, the General's Handbook itself. Sorry, I skipped over it. Yeah, that's probably a relevant one. Let's talk about the General's Handbook itself. That was all the armies. Sorry, kind of missed an important one there, folks. I forgot where we were. So the scenery one.
Yes.
All right. You want to start with this one, man? Why don't you take it? You want to take a swing at this? All this. So obviously, this part is what we're very concerned with.
Yeah. Do we want to just go straight to that and assume that people probably won't use the player setup terrain too often?
I agree with that. Rob on the show said, "Can we all just agree not to use these rules for like this back and forth of setting up terrain?" I would like to second that. I am completely on board for that. The right way to set up terrain didn't need a rules answer like this. So people often talk about like, this is bloat. Okay. I'm very sensitive to the word rules bloat. Sometimes rules answers need to be there. It's fine. You can go back. You can clean up core rules. Maybe this is, maybe it isn't. Sometimes there are supplementary rules packs that come out that maybe we didn't need. Maybe that's bloat. I'll tell you what is bloat. Rules that don't have any purpose to exist, right? And that's this.
I suppose,
since the beginning of time, we all set up our tables. We got through this. It was fine. I looked at my opponent and went, how about some stuff like this? That look cool? Yeah, sure. Why don't we move this thing over here? All right, great. You happy? Yeah, I'm happy. This seems fun. Let's roll for what they are. Okay, great.
Exactly. I mean, where this could have been is like as sort of guidance to TOs as one option of how to do it, alongside other options.
Right.
Rather than being prescriptive.
Yeah, this literally has no purpose to exist. Like, and I understand if you want to say, well, but new people. No, here I refuse to think of the children because, again, you could have just said, like you have forever, this is kind of how you set up a board. You put some pieces of terrain around that look kind of like this.
Yeah,
Great.
maybe there's something. Maybe there's more to it in terms of, if someone did have all of those different types of terrain in that table, then it's like a way of sort of guaranteeing that they're how it works. I didn't actually look at the table in any great detail, but maybe there's some magic to this that we're not seeing. But
It's not. It's just, I mean, like they fixed it to actually include the new terrain that they just printed, which is funny because the first printing of it didn't have their new terrain. But turning this into a mini game and like letting you cheat ahead by like you can put out your faction terrain, but then it doesn't have its rules. It counts as this other thing. And I'm just like, we didn't need this, guys. It was cool. We were fine. If you want to set change, like if you want to make some blanket rules about faction terrain and where it gets set up, I am super down with that actually. Okay. Because the fact that like this faction terrain could be on an objective, but this one can only be an inch away, and this one can be 3 inches away, and this one's like 72 inches away. Why? Like that having a universal way it works, super fine.
Well, kind of the problem here is that it's like there's the universal, but then it's layered on top of the faction specific. It doesn't,
of course,
place that. So, like, I think the ships and the Ideneth and the Wildwoods, I think, are really threatened by this.
Oh, sure.
To the point where, particularly the Sylvaneth, they really do rely on the woods, at least traditionally, maybe less so with the book. But they will be sort of doing much better on sort of planet bowling ball style terrain as opposed to highly dense maps, because it's the objectives thing is tolerable on most battle plans. Maybe not the one with 8 objectives, but it's
sure.
It's the 3 inches away from. It doesn't seem like that big a change, 3 inch from what, because in the book, in the battle tome, it's 1 inch away, but 3 inch away from other pieces of scenery is really tough with a piece of scenery that is 6 inches wide. And
it's a huge deal. It is a huge deal because the Fane of Slaanesh has the 3 inch restriction, right? Yeah. And the number of times I've had to sit there at the start of the game with like combat gauges and carefully fit that thing in. And I'm just putting down that one thing one time at the start of the game. I'm not trying to fit in huge woods. You know what I mean? And yeah, like 3 inches away from other terrain and 1 inch away from objective. I don't hate the idea of not being able to squat your terrain on objectives. Good. You can't do that. Okay. That's probably positive.
It's the scenery one is the potential problem.
And again, we've only layered the Sylvaneth problem up because what we should have had from the beginning is what I just talked about before. See earlier Sylvaneth comments. We could have solved it by they set down one woods and then overgrow the other terrain and bing, bang, boom. It's not a problem anymore.
Yes, exactly.
And we can just jettison that whole deal, right? So, like, again, fine. You fix the problem. I can set up a null hole now. Okay. Neat. Yeah. I mean, this is functional, unlike the other thing, which was just not working at all. But I just feel like these are pages that probably don't need to be here. So, and then of course we have to go through and do the same thing with meeting engagements since we decided to have that here too. And yet, nowhere here in the meeting engagements answers did we say how you start the game. Who has first turn? Okay. Curious. So cool. By the way, I have been working on my meeting engagements house rule doc. I was waiting on this to make sure that they weren't going to like do anything that invalidated what I did. I'll have that up this weekend because I do still think meeting engagements is super cool and has a lot of potential. It just has some flaws that need to be corrected. I'm happy to correct them. I'm okay with it.
There's some interest in holding events featuring those, whether narrative or match play. So
yeah,
it's an interesting one to explore.
I again, this is one of those things where I come like my history of like being, playing role-playing games since I was 10. It was just often the case that the rules of those games, let's call it, weren't as tight as you might hope. And so, I spent a lot of my young life rewriting rules and updating things and, changing things and going and reading other people's fixes to the rules. So I'm okay with it. And it's especially for a first final draft, whatever we're calling it. I'm fine. I'm happy to do the change. This was an interesting one that I hadn't even really noticed that these weird other things snuck in. Yes. Right? Like that like the chieftain with battle standard and Skaven slaves and these things that snuck into the back of the book, and they were like, oh no, pull them back out now. We didn't mean to include them.
The Tom Cull was expanded.
Yeah. Like what a weird, I would love to hear the behind the scenes of how this stuff got in here. Right? Because this leads us to then the other thing from the core rules, or to here that I didn't mention. We'll cover it in a moment, but we might as well jump on it now. I shouldn't say core rules. I should say General's Handbook. To the FAQ answer that's going to come up in the designer's commentary we can talk about now because it's relevant to this. And this is the sort of thing that Tom had popped off about earlier in the week, right? They added back in the Night Quester. They added back in the big Corn Dragon and, the Skullcracker and the allies for them. Okay, fine. And then they pulled out all this stuff that should have never been published because all this stuff went to Legends or whatever.
Yeah.
Let's get to this answer because this leads straight into this. If a unit's pitched battle profile is not included in the General's Handbook 2019 or its official errata document, can it be used in a pitched battle? Answer, no. Answer to the answer, no. Okay? Stop it. How are you going to crack off 2 letters and a period and think that you just didn't cause a bunch of problems? The problems that Tom put his finger on, quite rightly, is that so in the base rules, we should state that there is basically already a caveat for this, saying sort of like use this, or in the General's Handbook, there's a thing that says use this or a newer thing that's published, right?
Yeah, newest overrides, as you'd expect.
Right. So that's fine. We all get that. We all understand that, like, when the Slaves to Darkness Ever-Chosen book comes out in line with Warcry, if that's what ends up happening, that we'll use the new points for Varangard and Archeon and Marauders and whatever else they decide to change. Super cool. No question. The challenge this brings up is there are multiple, let's call it avenues of sort of ways where matched play scrolls, battalions, points, whatever, enter the ecosystem that isn't this source, right? This isn't actually the end all be all of match play rules. They're clearly thinking it is in that answer. And a lot of people bring up the Guardian of Souls with Mortality Glass. Look, everyone. Look, Nighthawk players. Spooky boys, let's have a heart-to-heart here for a moment, okay? The correct solution to that dum-dum is that, one, he should have never had a separate war scroll. He should have always just been a store-exclusive model that was an alternate sculpt, okay? 2, if we've gone down that road and we're past the point of no return, if we've passed the windmill, then the answer is the base war scroll of Spooky Boy should just be updated to say you may arm him with a Mortality Glass or the Torchy thing or whatever the 2-op, whatever his normal sculpt has. And you can just pick. And it looks like what it looks like, and you can just use it however you want because who cares? And the one scroll is the one thing. Okay? And if that makes them too hard to point the same, then update the rules at the same time so they're roughly equivalent choices. Basically like the corpse cart with exactly, with the lodestone or the lamp or whatever. Yeah. I'm not willing to let that weird one-off store model that shouldn't exist be the main thing we talk about because I don't care about the single Spooky Boy. Like, fix him differently. He shouldn't exist as it is. Now, let's put our fingers on the real problem here. White Dwarf and Box Games regularly produce battalions that have match play rules or things like that. And moreover, we would want them to. right? That adds value to going and buying the box or to buying the White Dwarf. Like, I'd like to think that White Dwarf is a viable method of introducing interesting alternative rules into the ecosystem.
And 40K has absolutely demonstrated that is the case with the Inari and the Assassins codexes. Those have just been very significant rules drops that have come via that medium, and that's obviously a lot less of a production than a hard copy Valtone would be.
Right. That's exactly right. And I would love to see stuff like that explored in the same way in AOS. I think of interesting minor factions or minor rules like that they could carve out through White Dwarf, right? That they could explore in a similar way. And what a great place to do it. That's why you have the smaller publication with the less cost and build time and, blah, 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 blah. But the reality is this answer pretends like that doesn't exist. I mean, this is just on its face incorrect, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to think about, by the way, even if we get rid of this answer, let's just strike this from the record, okay? Thus it is stricken. It's still what this has exposed is an underlying challenge we have with these sorts of ancillary rules, right? Because you've got something like the Wrath and Rapture box set that had 2 battalions in it, one for Khorne, one for Slaanesh. And they're fine battalions. And talk about whether they're good or bad and whatever. But they exist. And they don't want to put those in the General's Handbook because they're like, oh, well, people can't regularly access those rules because that box is out of print now, right? Or Loon Curse or whatever. Pick your box. There's been a bunch of them. Okay. And many of them are out of print. And so the question becomes, well, if it's out of print, we don't want to put the thing in the General's Handbook because then we're sort of showing people a thing they can't access in the regular points section. Maybe that's an attitude they have. I don't know that it is, but I could see that as a potential concern. Okay. And yes, so Keith just asked in the comments, the Skaven battalion in Carrion Empire. Yep, exactly. That would suddenly be no longer legal by this ruling. Yes, Keith, that's exactly correct. That's exactly the type of battalion I'm hitting upon here. Right.
And I think people would expect those kinds of battalions to have, a longer shelf life than, 6 or even 4 months.
Right.
I mean, I'm particularly surprised because the Blight War battalions, I'm pretty sure, did find their way into at least last year's General's Handbook. So that was
right.
the Nerf and Stormcast ones.
Yep. And the easy answer here to me, so GW, if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Appreciate it. It's very nice of you. Here's my easy solution for you, okay? Because I think this is actually quite simple. On the community site, okay, since I'm screen sharing, we'll just take a look. Over here on this community site where I have gone, you have this section right up here called FAQs and useful things. And right here, there's a thing called downloads. And I go here all the time because it's full of useful stuff, right? Like, it's full of all sorts of fun things. And it would be pretty easy for you to just, once the box set goes out of print, so you're not risking any sales. Sales are off the table. This thing is out of print. It cannot be used, right? I can come over here to AOS. This is where our warband roster is for skirmish and the Monstrous Arcanum things and base size chart.
An example right there, the Silver Tower War Scrolls.
Exactly. The same way you did it here, just put those battalions here, put their points on them, like you sometimes do in charts. That happens in these documents. And say, there you go. And then just list them in the GHB and say, and then the answer to this question is things listed in the GHB or that are printed later or that are available in the download section are all legal. Yeah. And then, and by the way, you could just put the Guardian of Souls with Mortality Glass here if we don't feel like fixing it the other way around, and then fine.
And maybe put a time limit on it, if it's of like the order of 1.5 years or 2 years, so that things that are sort of from underpointed battalions from the previous edition are no longer usable at some point in time.
Yeah, or alternatively, you make a new all-in document like this Monstrous Arcanum document right here, right? Which is just a bunch of points for the Forge World crap from 15 years ago that they made. And you just have a list of all the battalions, the box set it comes from, that it was originally sourced from, and current points. And you just update it. So the Swift Hawk Agent Battalion isn't 40 points anymore. It's now 120, but it's still legal. Ta-da!
Yeah,
Like,
that would do it.
it just feels like a thing that should be done. And I cannot imagine, and, you know, you could have like all the battalions could be in there in their PDFs or within a simple list format, because who cares, right? I don't need a lot of the fluff and fuss around it. I just need to know the basics of the thing. You could they could print it in that, you know, that template they have for battalions normally. You know, I'm talking about the one that's like in the new books where it's like 3 stacked per page. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're very condensed. Yeah.
Yeah, just use that condensed format, put them in there, and then have the points list at the bottom. Again, just like the Monstrous Arcanum document. And did we solve it? I think we solved it.
Yeah, and just to quickly touch on the White Dwarf example, I mean, the one that they've done.
Oh, yeah, sure.
They basically added Bael Grimnir, who's the sort of the brood father of the Vostark Lodge, which is the biggest lodge in the game, and they basically added him as a name character and a couple of battalions, one of which is somewhat interesting for match play. Bael's not particularly interesting for match play, but nevertheless, he's quite a integral character in the lore and the story and so on. And you know, there's no good reason not to include that kind of rule. And the other sort of obvious example, and they've just done this recently in 40k again, is releasing like an updated set of rules for a storm host or a chat or a space
right. Yep.
The White Dwarf package, you know, where you can have a named Lord Arcanum or something like that, and you know, some additional rules would be great.
Yeah. We can call it the ancillary sources guide or something like that. You know what I mean? Just it's because that lodge or whatever they're called in Fire Slayers should absolutely still be legal. Now, arguably it is, because that White Dwarf was published like 2 days after the General Handbook released or whatever, I think, by its published date. But why would we even have this discussion? Like, why are we even having that fight, you know?
Narrative storm host stuff. It hasn't. This is the Fire Slayers one was literally the first time that there have been points for anything, which was pretty exciting.
Absolutely. Please keep doing that. It's good. Thumbs up. A+. Like, that's a very good thing. Now, don't undo your good work, right? Okay. Well, we solved that one. So there you go. That's all yours. It's all yours, GW. Make it happen. Just get that PDF up and change this answer a little bit, and we're good to go. Easy peasy. Okay. And then we have this other rule about the faction terrain thing that I just mentioned that we only need to have because we have the other rules that we're all going to ignore. So life moves on. All right. And there we go. And that is all the FAQs done. All right, man. Woof. Got through all of them. We did it. Hey, I need like confetti above me for things like that.
Yeah. Fireworks go off in the background.
Yeah. So, but there you go. I mean, like I said, to return to my sort of summation from the start, I think this was mostly positive moves. I know some people are more sketchy on this. I think that's not seeing the forest for the trees, if I'm completely honest. I think this was mostly positive. I think this was a lot of steps in the right direction. When I look at things like the points move on Gits, I'm very happy to see that kind of stuff. I think most of the points moves in Skavens were they were directionally correct, even if not as strong as I think they need to be. Should they have gone farther with a few Skaven things? You betcha. Should they have probably hit FEC a little harder? Yeah, probably. But you know, like within the scope of this, was this mostly a positive thing? Yeah, I think it was mostly good. And, you know, the other thing we didn't mention that we really would be remiss in not mentioning that I'm actually just beyond excited about is that they're going to do this digital points thing every 6 months. So like every time they do the FAQ, they'll also do the digital points updates for the books that that updated, right? Or sorry, that came out or whatever, that they haven't touched since that time. So, for example, when we get the, I guess it'd be January FAQ, Slanesh and Fire Slayers and whatever else comes out over the next couple months, Sylvaneth or whatever, we'll have a digital points update. So great. And then those will get worked into War Scroll Builder, and good. Those are things will get adjusted faster. And I'm happy about that. I think that's a wonderful move. Thank you. 6 months is the right amount of time. Lets them correct things faster. Good. Awesome. Glad to hear it. Good work. Any parting thoughts there, Nico, before we call it a day? I know it's like very late there. You stayed up very late for me.
Yeah, it's getting on to 2 in the morning, but yeah, I certainly echo that point about it. That's very much the the biggest headline was the digital points and the frequency and ease with which that can be changed. One final comment, just a couple of the things that perhaps were missed opportunities. So just thinking about our old friends, the Blight Kings, with their modified 6-ups to explode, and other rules like that could have probably been swept up in a general FAQ on that kind of thing, and perhaps a couple of command abilities that shouldn't stack, like Cunning Ruck and probably War as well. Now that Idols have got the extra mobility.
Don't take away our toys. War is self-limiting now because you burn all your command points on Mighty Destroyer. So it's like look.
Yeah.
We'll let the market handle this one. It's fine. The free market can handle the War problem.
Yeah, less so than Cunning Rock, because I heard 500 shots for turn 1 at a recent tournament, which is not good.
Just go. That's like you just go leave
command points or something.
Yeah, go. You at that point, you just like the person starts rolling, and you're like, you go get a sandwich.
Yeah,
that's not long enough. You go have them cook a well done steak for you at that point with the amount of time it's going to take. I would like the steak medium well. I know that's going to take a while. Don't worry, I've got the time. Please ruin that piece of meat for me. I need to really burn off some time here. So.
Yeah, I like my steaks rare as well.
Yeah, no, I get you. I understand it's heresy. I would never, ever, to be very clear with everybody, I would never order a steak well done or medium well. That is disgusting. You are ruining a choice piece of meat there. So we're all fine. My point was just that was the amount of time you had. That's all. I am a medium rare man myself, but I understand. It's the rare is too bloody. I like it to be have gotten more near a flame. But anyway. Okay. Yeah, I agree. There were a couple missed opportunities, but again, if I have to have them air, I think softer is better than harder. The worst case to me scenario isn't that like things are still slightly off kilter and meta has to deal with tougher meta. The worst case to me is people go through another KO or Zinch experience. That is the worst.
Indeed, yeah. And I think the overall picture is that the top of the competitive meta has really narrowed, with sort of Slanesh, Feck, Doc, Skaven, Fire Slayers, and maybe Sylvaneth all competing up there, and maybe Gitz and Khorne not far behind at all. It's really compressed all of those layers together.
Yeah, I think probably some of the S tier stuff has got knocked down. Skaven probably not as much as it should have. I think they're still going to be highly competitive, but we'll see. We're going to do a meta prediction show next week while we're waiting on Skaven, so we'll see. We're gonna predict the new meta, so that'll be next week's show. We'll deep dive on some stuff like that as well as some other things. But overall, happy, not thrilled, but happy. I rate it a solid 7 out of 10. That's where I'm at. So good. We can room for growth still. We can inspect and adapt and improve, but overall positive. That's where I landed. I was like, okay, good. We can all just agree to jettison the terrain rules, and that puts me to a 7. All right, Nico, buddy, I know it's late. Thank you very much. I'm gonna let you get back to your family and probably go to sleep. For all of you out there watching, thank you very much. Nico, you had to play both guest and co-host today. You did an admirable job. It's good to have you back on the show. I can't wait to have you back again, sir. So
You're very welcome, and thank you for having me on. That's been really good.
Anytime, brother.
Thanks to everyone.
Absolutely. As always, we thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next Wednesday.